The morning sun's rays came through the window like intrusive, uninvited guests. After all, no one bothered to curtain them with the curtains that were available. The intense light from the window reached the bed. The body under the blanket mumbled dissatisfiedly, hiding his head under the pillow and grumbling displeasedly. The girl was indignant about why it was so bright, and then she was surprised that morning had already come. Her whole body ached. It looked like she fell asleep drunk last night. She couldn't understand where she was. The heroine examined and did not recognize her hands. Then she felt long red hair on her shoulders, and she started screaming in horror. All this definitely started not yesterday, but long before that. About a week ago, when the heroine was reading a novel. That day she finally paid off all her student debts, and I decided to celebrate with chicken, beer, and a book. It was a story about a rich man whose body was littered with scars and cuts. Slowly withering, he destroyed himself and the world around him. Afterwards, the story moved to a time when the hero met the one and fell in love. They began an affair. Under the impression of a good book and the influence of alcohol, our heroine fell asleep. But when she woke up, she discovered that she had become Amelia Dine, a secondary character in that novel. And to make matters worse, she was a countess, the only daughter of the knight commander. The girl was pretty, and that made her happy. Such forms that one could be proud. Be that as it may, the girl soon came to terms with her current situation, and she decided to visit the bank with the other countesses to find out if she had any debts. The girl was holding in her hands a bank statement on her debt obligations. Soon she lost consciousness right in the bank office. She had just paid off her student debts, and now I owed someone again. Moreover, the current figures were more significant. She understood that she would have to work tirelessly all her life. Amelia decided that it was better not to think about such things when she was sober. But she also knew that alcohol was her problem. Sitting in bed under the covers, the girl thought that alcohol was the product of the devil. Her head hurt and her body ached. She wondered if drinking had brought her here too. Then our heroine wondered who she slept with. She had no memories of this. On the nearest chair she saw men's clothing. Having examined it more closely, she was surprised. Embroidered on the sleeve of her blue jacket was the crest of the Duke of Child's family from the book she had recently read, a sign of ruin and consequence. The girl knew from the book she read that in that family there was only one person who carried this banner, Killian Child. A man with a toned torso had a towel wrapped below his waist. He dried his wet hair. It was clear that he had just taken a refreshing shower. When he appeared, the girl was very surprised. He greeted her, calling her sister. The man's face shone with positivity in every eye. The words sister sounded in the girl's head, and she was very pleased. She closed her eyes with pleasure, but then she pulled herself together. The man asked if she was okay. He felt her skin and looked into her eyes, and the girl couldn't believe that they were so nice to her. In the book, he was not as attentive and caring. Drops of water dripped from his hair. He held the girl by the cheek and looked into her eyes and smiled. The girl found the strength to break away from him and, covering herself with a blanket, muttered something in response to him. Our heroine decided for herself that she needed to put everything in its place. It turned out that she became Amelia Dine, and the man was Killian Child. He was the youngest of 4 sons who went to any lengths to survive. A monster who continued to live although he dreamed of death. According to the book, the hero went crazy at the end because the people were jealous of him and wanted his money. That's why he started the war, during which many people died and entire countries disappeared. Therefore, it could not have happened that a simple heroine with a lot of debts began to communicate with him. She admitted to the man that she didn't remember what happened yesterday, but it seemed like it was fun. The girl noticed that since morning had already come, she did not want to waste her time and would hurry back to her place. The man closed the door with his hand. He didn't want to let the girl go so quickly. He said that last night she was the first to say that she liked him. The girl did not remember what she said, and the man continued that he then responded to her with mutual recognition, and that she then said that she liked what he did, especially his rudeness. The girl screamed at him to stop, that she already understood everything. She ordered him not to say another word. The man was surprised that yesterday she was completely different. The girl apologetically explained why he continued to call her sister. He answered smiling that she herself asked. That being 23 years old was just wonderful. Our heroine told herself that it was time to quit drinking alcohol. Or you can die like that. That she is now at a wonderful young age. She remembered from the book that when the hero was 25, he started a war and destroyed the world. And before his next birthday, he met his savior and main character. It turned out that there were 2 years left for the full outcome of that story. The girl asked to forgive her for her rudeness. She reminded them that they met for the first time yesterday, so she preferred to leave. The man asked if she was sure about this, that she met for the first time only yesterday. He did not share such confidence. The girl was surprised. Killian consoled her. He answered that she herself did not remember what happened. The heroine apologized, making excuses that she probably drank too much yesterday. The partner said that this circumstance puts her in a difficult position, that she wants to leave because she doesn't remember anything about last night. His feet were shod and the girl stood next to him barefoot. The man gently grabbed his partner's face and turned it towards him to look into her eyes. He seriously told her that he had remembered every detail since yesterday. Our heroine realized that they wouldn't just let her go. I was afraid of revenge, but I didn't want to be at the epicenter of destruction. She apologized, and she said that she had something to confess. She was sure that the man would quickly come to his senses after hearing what he heard. She deliberately told him that she was with him only for the money. The heroine was afraid that she had gone too far, that she pushed him into a dark future even though she tried to avoid it. And she really hoped that he wouldn't kill her. The man pretended that he didn't care about the girl's motivation. She was extremely surprised. He asked that this was not a reason to run away from him. The girl clarified that she knew that he was the Duke of Child. That's why she buttered up. He still didn't understand what she was getting at. The redhead was screaming that his family is the richest in the world, and she emphasized that she only liked him because of the money. The man smiled contentedly. He said it was nice. After all, he had a lot of money, and it turned out that the girl liked him very much. The girl asked him to wait. She suggested that we change clothes first and then talk. She thought that his body was beautiful but too attractive, and it was somehow awkward for her to stand in her underwear. She couldn't find her clothes. The man was pleased with her embarrassment. He said it was in the wash. He suggested wearing a blue silk robe for now. Amelia thought as soon as he had time to prepare her clothes. She said that she would return as soon as she changed clothes. In the end, she had to put on that robe. She was uncomfortable and a little shy. Her feeling of awkwardness only intensified. She thought that now she would definitely not be able to escape without clothes. Killian, already dressed in a chic shirt, walked through the door. He gently touched the girl's cheek with his cheek, and he quietly told her in her ear that the blue robe suited her very well. She pushed him away with her hand, returning the conversation to the previous topic. She reminded him that she met him because of money. Doesn't he find this humiliating? The man continued to laugh at her. He said that since she liked money so much, he would need to earn more money like that. He hovered over the girl, leaning on the bed with his hands. He said that she can't imagine how sexy she looks now. Killian knocked the girl onto the bed. He asked what she liked about him, besides the money. That based on the events of last night, she also liked his appearance, and he began to unbutton the buttons on his shirt. Amelia thought that there was no need for him to take off his clothes, since he had just dressed. She couldn't remember what happened yesterday. She told herself that she must definitely remember. She egged herself on, but nothing came to her mind. She remembered how a man in a hat and coat came through the door. He politely asked her permission to sit next to him. She then noticed to herself that he was handsome. Here she did not understand why the Duke came to a provincial bar and even without security. She tried to remember what happened in the novel. On that day, Killian visited the bar for the first time. It was on this day that he threw himself off the cliff, as his pain was unbearable, and it was the anniversary of the death of his brothers. It turned out that she met him in that bar, and he planned to die after drinking. He told her, kissing her ear, that she brought him here herself, and now she must be held accountable for what she did. The girl laughed. She asked how she could bring him here. He confirmed that she asked passers-by where the nearest hotel was. Amelia covered her face with her hands in shame. It was kind of crazy. It turned out that she had seduced the one she should have avoided, and it was wonderful that she prevented disaster. But in her place, there should have been another heroine of the novel, and it turned out that she stole the main female role of this novel. The man kissed her and she covered her face in horror. The girl asked what happened after they got here. Now the man was covering his face with his hands. She pulled his hands away from his face. He said that he felt happy, and then they spent the night together, and then they started with kisses. The man decided to show how they kissed then. He liked this idea, and with his hands he quickly began to untie the belt of her robe. Suddenly the girl pulled his face away from hers, resting herself with outstretched arms. The man rubbed his forehead, and I thought that perhaps it would be enough to push him away like that. He asked why she didn't like this. The girl replied that the matter was different, and the same should be done with the one you love. She thought it wasn't that she didn't like it. She couldn't get involved with the main character who wanted to destroy everything. Killian asked what she meant. She thought she had said something wrong, that he was outraged by this treatment of a member of the child family. The man happily asked that maybe this was an intricate way to confess his love to him. He was beaming with delight. The man began to daydream, and the girl was outraged. He recalled her words that he only does this to those he loves. And looking back at the events of last night, we can draw the appropriate conclusion. The girl contradicted him. She assured the man that he had misunderstood her words. And I thought to myself that because of this man, the whole world should collapse. Killian sighed sadly in response, and Amelia thought that she would definitely start to fall in love. He looked at her with sad eyes, and then he started kissing her lips uncontrollably. She thought it wasn't worth doing, and it had to stop. The man got turned on and in return aroused his partner. He asked if he could continue further. He said that he wanted to hear her consent. I wanted to hear that his sister also wants the same thing as him. The girl thought to herself that hearing him call her little sister was a good reason to agree to go straight to hell with him. But she tried to sober herself up and stop. After all, another main character was soon to appear, Vanessa Mabranda. And if this continues, she will end up becoming his heartbroken ex. Amelia, smiling, told Killian that she really thought that, but they were interrupted by a man bursting into the room. The partner covered the girl with himself, instinctively protecting her. The hotel employee was unhappy. He said that the wrong kids went today. I asked what they were doing, and he reminded that it was time for eviction. Killian was angry. He covered the girl's shoulders with the blanket, and she yelled that he needed to be taught to knock. The man hugged the furious girl to him. She calmed down a little. He glared angrily at the boor who had burst into them without warning. Another man entered the room. Killian asked where he had been. He apologized to the gentleman for what he had not noticed. It was Hayden. He promised to deal with that bastard. His face did not bode well. The hotel employee apologized and asked to wait. He made excuses that he could not know who was renting his room. Killian hugged the girl from behind. I asked if she was okay. She asked to clarify what he meant by, "We'll sort it out." The man asked her not to worry about such trifles. He said that he only wanted the person who saw her almost naked to die. The girl knew that Killian didn't particularly care about human lives, but she thought that killing for such a trifle was too much. She asked to let that idiot go alive and well. At the same time, she made a cute face and made eyes at him. She said that he did not deserve to die. Killian frowned. He asked why she was shielding that pretzel. The man was clearly angry, or maybe jealous. Amelia noticed that the interlocutor emanated a murderous aura, and she hoped that he wouldn't kill her. She answered that she was only curious whether he would change his mind after her request. Killian asked him to forgive him for not understanding her right away. The girl continued to flirt with him. She said that he would still refuse her request. She continued that she had already begun to think about how to reward him if he agreed, and she looked from under the hair in her eyes to see how he reacted to her request. The man thought for a moment, and then he hugged her tightly and asked her to clarify what she meant by reward. Amelia looked at him with her green eyes so naively, and she asked what he would like, and I thought that he would probably ask me to finish what I started a couple of minutes ago. Killian answered quite seriously that he wanted it just like before, but the girl didn't understand him at all. He asked him to call him what she just did. The girl tensed, remembering what she called him, and then it dawned on her. Kyle. The man asked her to call him that way from now on. This was a very unexpected and no less sweet request. The girl promised that she would do so. The man rejoiced uncontrollably. Amelia asked what it would be like a nickname. The man was surprised. The girl thought to herself that no matter how nice he was now, she won't be able to call him that way in the future. She was going to stop their communication as soon as possible. The servant said that he had prepared snacks for them. There was wine, meat, and bread on the table. Killian suggested that the dumbfounded girl try it. She was simply delighted. The man, understanding her pause in his own way, offered to eat later if she had other plans. Amelia, realizing what he was getting at, hastened to answer that now was the time to refresh herself, and she began unceremoniously gobbling up snacks, stuffing them into both cheeks. But after chewing the first bite, she made a surprised face. The food turned out to be very tasty. She admitted to herself that she had never tasted such exquisite cuisine in her life. The girl realized that she was a little carried away, and the man was decorously sipping tea. He noticed that even when she was eating, she looked like she was on the cover of a hotel advertisement. As the servant entered, he spoke to the master, that this may not be enough, but these are the best clothes that he managed to prepare in such a short time. Killian suggested that the girl change clothes after eating. Amelia looked stunning in a red dress. She rejoiced at the appropriate clothes. She said "Mister" to the man, but the man interrupted her. He asked to be called by his name. The girl remembered that she promised to call him Kyle. "I noticed that he is dressed differently today than he was yesterday." He asked to clarify that she liked his image from yesterday more. But the girl was making fun. What if we talk about her preferences? Then she prefers to see him naked. She then scolded herself for what she said. That she probably hasn't sobered up yet. The man said that yesterday was the anniversary of his brother's deaths. That's why he was dressed differently than usual. Amelia knew this but remained silent. She understood that that day was full of sorrow. She was sure that her actions affected him very differently than they would have met on any other day. He asked if she was tired. The girl replied that she was a little tired. But then I got better, saying that she was very tired, and I would like to return home as soon as possible to rest. She complained about her health. Killian argued that this was bad, and he offered to bring her medicine. The girl stopped him with a gesture and a shout, claiming that this was not necessary. Amelia rubbed her forehead, and she said that she would feel much better at home, and I asked his opinion if they went right now. The man realized that the girl needed rest. He picked her up and carried her decisively. This scared the girl, but Killian asked her not to twitch, saying that he would carry her. She couldn't understand what was happening so suddenly. The man carried her carefully, and the girl noticed that it was so pleasant for her to be in his arms. But then I drove such thoughts away from myself. The man offered to accompany the girl to her home, and asked where she lives. A luxurious carriage with the family coat of arms on the door was waiting for them. Amelia let out a cry of surprise at the sight of the carriage. She thought it was just a hotel on wheels. Killian asked her to give her address. The heroine suddenly remembered that Killian did not know that she was the daughter of Countess Diana, and so I decided to use this to escape from him. She asked me to just go straight, that she lived very close by. The man looked out the window with incomprehension. He saw a river, a fence, and a vegetable patch. He mockingly asked that the girl lived right here in the vegetable patch. The girl laughed it off and giggled. She thought that she already remembered where everything was. After all, only a week has passed since she found herself here. She laughed and said that there was a mistake. And pointing her finger to the right, she insisted that she needed to turn there, and then left to River Road. But then the landscape in the window changed to something completely uninhabited. Killian noted out loud that there was construction going on here, and he sarcastically asked how she lived here. The girl again began to show the way. She asked to turn right, then left, but she drove into a completely impassable wilderness. Then she warned about the turn. The man sternly called the girl by no name and reminded her that this was the 5th time she was taking her to the wrong place. She had a confused face. He just asked not to tell him that she was doing this on purpose, so that he would not know her address. She knew that he would guess about her idea to lead them in circles. He said that since she didn't want to go home, that meant she wanted to go home to him. The girl did not count on this at all, and the man smiled contentedly. She asked him to immediately tell her her wishes. Otherwise, he might misunderstand her. The girl thought to herself that he understood her intentions correctly. Killian asked the coachman to take them to his estate. The girl was against it. She realized that she was very mistaken. Not only could she not escape, but she was also going to his house. She thought about jumping out as she walked, but she was afraid it would hurt. It was still better than being with Killian, until the plot of the novel leads them to a tragic end. The carriage was traveling fast. The girl recalled that her father taught her fencing, as he was the commander of the knights. Therefore, she convinced herself that if she rolled head over heels in the mud, nothing bad would happen to her. Killian told her that he lives alone. Therefore, she can stay with him as long as she wants. That he has a fairly spacious room and you can spend the night with him if you want. The girl could not understand why his face expressed so much hope. She wondered if he had fallen in love with her since he was offering to stay the night in his spacious room. After all, according to the plot of the novel, Killian avoided women until he met the main character. And it was all because of his status as a duke. The girl thought that perhaps last night had impressed him so much. She didn't remember anything, but he really seemed to like it. The duke asked Amelia if she was comfortable. She didn't immediately understand what he was getting at, but he was in no hurry to explain to her. The girl sat next to him, leaning on his shoulder. But realizing that this might be inconvenient for him, she apologized. She quickly moved away from him and put her hands away. The man forced her head onto his lap. He said everything was fine, and he invited her to lie down at her convenience. Amelia thought it was really convenient. She had never known before that lying on someone's lap could be so comfortable. The man asked her just not to fidget if she didn't want to seduce him again. He said that it was still a long way to get to the estate, and this carriage is his property. Therefore, he could do whatever he wanted here. The girl jumped up sharply in indignation. She was extremely outraged by such hints on his part. And the man smiled, pleased that his vulgar joke was a success. Their carriage drove up to a luxurious estate. Our heroine thought that there was nothing wrong with her living here for a while. The gate was already open. They were clearly waiting impatiently. There was an elegant fountain in the middle of the courtyard. The carriage passed him and approached the front entrance of the mansion. The duke got out of the carriage first to offer his hand to his guest. All the servants came out to meet the master. She was in strict uniform and bowed obligingly. The girl, looking around the size of the estate, was surprised. She was willing to bet that it would take a long time to get from the main gate to the entrance of the estate. She was hoping to escape from here at night. But now I was afraid that I might simply get lost here at night. Killian asked if she liked it here. She replied that she would not get bored in such a beautiful estate, even if she stayed here for a couple of days. The man didn't like the part about a few days. The girl modestly replied that if she stayed for a long time, she would bring inconvenience to him and his servants. Killian argued that she was wrong, and the servants unanimously asked her to stay with them as long as she wished. At the same time, they smiled at her and bowed politely. The man escorted the guest into the house. He affectionately called her little sister. The servants were delighted with the way their master called the girl and how he carefully hugged her by the shoulders. Our heroine wondered to herself, why did the character who seemed so busy in the novel turn out to be so careless? However, all the servants were waiting to report on the recent news. Amelia said that she sees that he has a lot to do, and she insisted that she should leave quickly. He asked her where she wanted to go. She replied that she thought he would be busy for a while. He said her conclusion was wrong, and he asked me to sit here for a couple of minutes and let him finish everything. Killian made a stern and serious face. He said that everyone has 30 seconds to report. When contacted by the former, he promised to consider a contract with the Mirrorfield trademark. He asked me to bring the documents to his office. Another said that they were asking for donations. He agreed and ordered to send them. A third reported that a railroad company was asking for a loan from a bank named after Child. He approved the loan. Amelia grabbed her head at how much money he had just distributed in just a second, and Killian was already next to her. I asked if she was upset about anything. He noticed how she was carefully watching him. The girl became thoughtful. She didn't even realize how much she had fallen in love with his attractiveness while he worked. The man said that he would show her his room, that she will live there for the next couple of days. The girl asked him where she would live. The Duke smilingly replied that of course in his room. After all, last night she dragged him into the room, and now it was his turn. The girl didn't even know how to answer this. She tried to say something, but Killian interrupted her, saying that there were no more rooms available. This surprised her very much because how could this be in such a mansion? They walked along the corridor, and the servants accompanied them at a short distance and admired the gentleman, who was simply glowing with happiness. The girl asked, pointing to the doors, what was wrong with these rooms? The maids replied that she could not stay in these chambers. After all, they were all already busy. They argued that it was unsafe to be alone. And the Duke continued his tour of the estate. The maids asked her to stay close to the Duke. They even offered her to stay forever. In one of the rooms, a simply grand dinner had already been served, but the girl thought that she needed to get out somehow. Afterwards, she and the Duke walked around the fountain. He asked if she liked the dishes. The girl answered in the affirmative that everything was very tasty, and she privately regretted that she would never have the chance to try this again. She finally decided for herself that this could no longer continue. She sat down on the nearest bench, and she gasped deliberately. The Duke was worried about his guest. She said, touching her forehead, that after the walk she seemed to have a fever. The girl said that she wanted to take a shower and go rest. The man had a worried look on his face. He asked the maids to take the girl to the bathroom and help her. Amelia asked with sparkling eyes, "Will he wait for her in the bedroom like an obedient boy?" After a pause, he answered briefly, "Yes," and the girl was happy to herself. Her mission was almost accomplished. While our heroine changed into a soft and comfortable robe, the maids had already prepared a bath with rose petals for her. The girl asked to prepare aromatic oils for her, the smell of which the Duke liked. The maid helpfully answered her, calling Madame Sister. Amelia was surprised by such an unusual address to her, but remembered that the Duke never called her anything else in front of the servants, so they might just have thought that that was her real name. However, this was no longer important to her. After all, she had already decided everything for herself. She told the maid that she was thirsty. She understood everything and asked her to let him bring her a refreshing drink. Our heroine sent away the two maids assigned to her, and she quickly put on the dress. Luckily, the guest bathroom was on the first floor. She decisively opened the window and stood on the windowsill with her bare feet. I looked back and for the last time sadly looked at all the luxury that remained here forever. Amelia left an envelope with a letter for Killian on the table, and she decisively jumped through the bathroom window into the garden of the ducal mansion. She said goodbye forever to the rich gentleman main character, who was doomed to death. She ran away without looking back, only her bare feet were visible. The assistant reported to the gentleman about what had happened. He asked him for forgiveness. He explained that while the maids were away, my lady ran out the window. A week has passed since then when Amelia ran away, only leaving a letter. The Duke was sad all this time and was indifferent to everything. The girl left him the following message. "Sir, I sincerely hope that you will be able to forgive me. You and I belong to different worlds, so we are not suitable for each other. I also want to apologize for the fact that my intentions were not pure. I will pray that one day you will meet your true love." The Duke was sitting in his study late at night. He reread Amelia's letter. He pondered the concept of true love. After she left him in such a cruel way, he remembered that it was the girl who then dragged him into bed. How surprised he was then by her behavior. How I tried to explain myself to a completely unfamiliar lady, but she said that he was handsome, that he can't get enough of him, and she asked me to call her sister. I asked her to call her that at least once. She had such sad and seductive eyes then. The Duke then asked Lady Dane to go to bed. That judging by how much she drank then, he doubted that she was adequate now, and he asked not to tell him that she was older. After all, she was born only a month earlier. Then the girl was surprised that the man knew about her. After all, they just met for the first time today. And he asked if she always brings men she met for the first time to the hotel. She then changed her anger to mercy. She said that she would just lie down here, and so that he would trust her. She was seductive. Her neckline, patting gesture, and alluring gaze excited sexual fantasy. The Duke thought that he was not in the habit of taking a girl for one night, and he couldn't understand why he followed her then. And she beckoned him with her green eyes. The man pondered the situation for some time, but I came to the conclusion that it still makes sense. Probably the girl didn't remember, but they already met for the first time 10 years ago. He began to kiss her lips, accepted her hugs, reciprocating. Then both simply disappeared into the madness of carnal pleasures that washed over them. 10 years ago, a class for heirs was held at the child bank under the guidance of the bank's director. A carriage with the Duke's family coat of arms, drawn by a pair of horses, was driving quickly towards the building. The boy riding in that carriage asked his father, "How long will that lesson last?" The man answered briefly that it would last about 2 hours. That noble boy was Killian Child himself at the age of 13. He was thinking about the upcoming dinner that was planned for the evening at Countess Mainz's. They arrived at the main building of the child bank. A man with red hair stood near the building. He scratched his head as he read the long list of their debt obligations. The man he vouched for ran away, and it turned out that his unpaid debts now fell on his shoulders. Amelia Dine was 14 years old at the time. The boy got out of the carriage, and his attendant carefully threw a coat with hand-embroidered lapels and cuffs over his shoulders. Killian was reserved in his emotions and cold towards caring for him. He was eager to finish that lesson as quickly as possible and start having fun in the evening. At the door of the bank, he saw a family. The man told his wife that he thoughtlessly acted as a guarantor for his comrade. The boy didn't know who they were. His mentor said that this was the family of the Earl of Dyne, that they acted as a guarantor for their friend, and they left their lands and all the property donated to them by the emperor as collateral for the loan. The woman laughed. She said through laughter that it was just money. There won't be any, and that's okay. After all, no one was hurt, and their baby Amelia is healthy. And since they are a family, they will cope with everything together. And the red-haired, green-eyed girl told her dad that her mom was right, that together they are strength. Her eyes were burning and her hands were clenched into fists. Dad looked at her, calling her dear and other gentle and affectionate words. The parents hugged their wonderful and restless daughter, feeling love for her and for each other. The guy told himself that he didn't care, that as the heir of the Child family, he was trained to ignore all sorts of trifles like feelings of envy or jealousy. When Killian was 7 years old, he came into the office and called Dad, but he recalled that he asked to call him Father, and that burning bitterness in his heart always forced him to look back at the past. These small hands with which the girl held the big hands of her mother and father together. The boy did not know what he was looking for there, in those memories. And when he was close to the girl, looked into her green eyes, and that meeting was so short that the memories of it tended to fade. He really liked her. He experienced incredible feelings when he felt the tenderness of her skin and caressed her face, and she smiled back at him. The girl appeared in his thoughts again and again, making his heart beat faster. He wanted to merge with her for the rest of his life. A few days later, an assistant came with a report that the royal family is asking for additional funding. The Duke asked how much they needed this time. The guy looked intently at the red-haired family. He recognized them almost immediately. This was the Earl of Dyne's family. He hadn't seen them for a long time. Because of the debts they had, they were now not allowed into the palace. Killian watched them from the side. The woman asked her to forgive her, and the man reproached himself that he was a bad father, that because of him the family is forced to suffer so much. But Amelia smiled at them. Her father gave her his hand, and the girl claimed that one day they would pay off all their debts. She knew that the amount there was simply huge, but step by step they must cope. After all, in her past life she was able to get out of debt once already. She was sure that she would come out now. Amelia hugged her parents. She comfortingly told them that at least they were all alive and well. This means they didn't lose anything worthwhile. The Duke sighed heavily. He had seen how the girl had grown since the last time he saw her, but only after the second meeting did he understand that the feeling he felt that day when he was a child was precisely envy. He, the only heir of the Child family, could not break through the wall to those bright feelings of warmth and comfort, even in that provincial bar, when Amelia was clearly not herself. He couldn't push her away that night when he decided to jump off the cliff and end his life that way. Even to a stranger, being in a drunken state, the girl gave so many vivid emotions, and in return he wanted to beg her to take him into her world. The man was sitting at his desk, reading a letter from Amelia. He couldn't even imagine that the girl would drag him to that hotel. But to tell the truth, he liked everything then. And that feeling was much more than a simple liked it. The Duke sat on a chair, covering his face. He understood that he was doing something unusual for him that night. That's why when he was informed a week ago about the girl's escape, he thought it was time to stop fooling around. Although Killian was aware that he missed her greatly, he let her go, knowing that now his heart was no longer under his control. She made him like this, and then she said that they were not suitable for each other. The man agreed with her argument, and it turned out that this was now their common problem. Killian realized that he could not refuse the girl, so that means he had nothing to wait for. He called his assistant. After all, since they didn't fit each other, you just need to make sure they do. The assistant came to the master, ready for his orders. Killian asked where Amelia was now. He hesitated a little. Then he said that a week ago, having run away to her home, the girl became ill. The Duke began to shout at Hayden. Why didn't he tell him this earlier? Then, changing his anger to mercy, he decided that it was his own fault for leaving her alone. He voiced his decision to go to Amelia's house tomorrow. The assistant helpfully asked what he should prepare for the gentleman for the next day. Killian asked to take care of the girl's medications and favorite things, but Gaydon did not understand the second part of the phrase about favorite things. The Duke recalled that the girl said that she loved money. Therefore, he asked to prepare gold bars and jewelry. And there was something else. He asked me to prepare a special suit for him for tomorrow, which would be easy to take off. His family's coat of arms had 2 lions, and the man knew that Child the Lion would never give up until he got what he wanted. Even in the garden of the mansion, someone could be heard coughing heavily. The girl asked herself why she ended up in the body of the Count's daughter, who had a lot of debts hanging on her. She couldn't even go to the hospital, although I felt simply disgusting. Fever, chills, suffocating cough. All the signs were alarming. Amelia lay on the pillow and thought, maybe she should have spent an emergency day on the services of a healer. But she understood that it was expensive. But then she heard a noise in the corridor of their mansion. She couldn't understand what was happening. After all, they no longer had servants. The girl sat up in bed. She simply didn't have the strength to do more. Amelia, gathering all the strength she had left, threw the blanket over her shoulders and crawled out of the room, holding onto the wall so as not to collapse on the floor. She heard her mother's plea. The girl became wary. She looked down the steps. The man on the first floor gave orders to others to thoroughly check everything everywhere. Some of them glued small pieces of paper onto the furniture. The girl noticed that there was already pasting on the fireplace, chair, and floor lamp, and this was the coat of arms of the Child family. Her mother asked what they should do now. The head of the family hugged her shoulders. The girl realized that the property was now being sealed. It was horror, a nightmare and a disaster for the family and each member separately. Amelia rushed to her parents, and the employee stood in front of a mountain of teddy bears and asked what they were. The eldest of them ordered him to seal everything he had. The girl realized that it was a piece of goods that they needed to deliver. She asked the employee to stop. He rudely replied that he was busy. She claimed that when the Child family bank gives money to the nobles, but they do not return it. This means that the property pledged as collateral for the loan is seized. The emperor himself grants the nobles their status. The employee replied that it was true, not in their case, and the girl knew that only those who have an heir who can provide for their family are exempt from payment. It was customary for nobles to retain their title even if they lost all their property. And if the family went bankrupt, the heir could still become a politician or occupy a high position. In this case, the right to exemption from payments helped him restore family honor. The girl understood that she was the heiress of the Dine family. The employee asked if Miss would go to work. His face had a rather unpleasant expression. Our heroine remembered the first time she woke up in Amelia's body. Then she saw a large number of advertisements about the work of their newspapers, as well as credit policy and guarantee from the bank. She knew that Count and Countess Dane loved her unselfishly, that even when she woke up and did not understand what was happening around her, they were with her, supported her, and surrounded her with care. The girl was not sure that even though they were poor, but she hardly dared to deal with the current situation for the sake of other people. And since she was now Amelia Dine, it was her responsibility. She resolutely announced that she would go to work to pay off her debts. The employee said that in this case she would need to bring proof of her employment within a month. The girl promised that she would do everything on time, and she asked them to leave her house immediately. The employee was furious. He believed that she was simply wasting their time. He stuck Amelia's sealing papers on the dress, and he said that he would keep an eye on her. She was scared and trembling all over, and the collectors were already leaving the whole pack of vultures from the Count's house. The girl was furious. She then called the chief employee the most disgusting names. She was infuriated that he had put a sealed property sticker on her. The head of the family was dejected. He sat with his head down. He asked his daughter to forgive him. He understood that because of his thoughtless act, she had to get into trouble. The more the girl got to know her current family, the more strange they seemed to her. After all, her father, the Count, became the youngest knight to receive the title of Grand Master. Only the best knight of the Emperor could receive such a title, and it turned out that such a great man was betrayed for his own loyalty and buried under unsustainable debt. And now, despite his title, he sewed eyes on teddy bears to continue wearing his title. Madame Dine consoled her daughter, calling her baby. I asked if she was scared. She consoled her with kind words. She came from high society and was the daughter of a count, and despite all the difficulties caused by his father, she was still as beautiful and proudly withstood everything that befell their fate. She, as a mother, invited her daughter to pray to God together. This was their biggest problem. These sweet and kind but not at all self-sufficient nobles were simply incorrigible. They prayed while water dripped from the roof, but they were not able to fix it, and their servant Peter was too short to reach. Although I understood what needed to be done and how, her family prayed even as the mice ate the last of their food. They prayed when Amelia went missing. It seemed that all they were doing was praying, even if it was already late at night. That's why she couldn't just run away and leave them alone. These people loved her very much. They will pray until they lose consciousness that their daughter will be found. But she did not wish such a fate for them. There were sticky notes from the borrower's bank on the couch and table. Amelia asked her parents to sit on the sofa. She used the chair nearby. She asked them to calculate how much money they spent on living. She offered to understand where they could save money, so that this money can be used to pay off the debt. Her mother answered that she could get sick if she didn't eat well. Therefore, she offered to earn a little money by selling jewelry. My father promised to find himself a job as soon as possible. They were happy that they had a wonderful daughter, and they were surprised when she came up with such a wonderful plan without first studying economics. The girl scratched the back of her head. She said that she had just read a lot in the newspapers before, and she thought to herself that the memories of that Amelia also helped her a little. But then the girl coughed. It was a severe suffocating attack. Her parents were seriously worried about her, but she convinced them that everything was fine. O said that she would go to her room to rest. A guest was supposed to come to her, and she asked him to let him in without any unnecessary questions or inquiries. Walking into the room, she said to herself, "Why, you shouldn't overexert yourself when you're sick." She hoped that the healer would come as soon as possible. Amelia tried to tear the sticker off her dress, but she couldn't do it, even when she tried her best. Then the girl decided to quit this overwhelming occupation, saying that it was no longer important. She simply took off her dress and threw it away, having considered that if someone wants to enter, they must first knock on the door. Our heroine simply collapsed with her whole body on the bed and fell into a deep sleep. She slept, but even in her sleep she felt very bad. It turned out that she had avoided a devastating end, but she didn't want to die from the disease at all. In her sleep she asked for water. The voice asked if she could stand up. She forced her eyes open. Her Kyle stood worried with a glass of water in his hand. He saw that the girl had woken up and asked how she was feeling. The girl's face was red from the temperature, and her hair was disheveled and wet from sweat. The man asked her to drink water first. He carefully threw his jacket over her. Out of weakness, the girl could not hold the glass and spilled water on the Duke's jacket. She asked her to forgive her for her awkwardness. He asked her to stop. Killian asked why she let him in then. He stated emphatically that she needed rest, and he forbade her to overwork herself. He threatened that he would not go anywhere until she recovered. I asked her to be more attentive to herself, and he asked if she wanted to seduce him again. The girl was embarrassed and wrapped his jacket tightly around her neckline. Amelia said she wasn't going to do anything like that, and it's just an accident. The man accepted her arguments without argument, shifting the conversation to another topic. He asked how long she had been sick. The girl hesitated and said that she had been coughing since she undressed to take a bath. She knew it would sound terrible if she said she ran away because she was sick. The Duke was surprised that she ran away then so as not to infect him. The girl beamed all over, because he fell for her trick. Killian said, already smiling, that he didn't even know about it, that he thought she just rejected him. Both were already laughing. The moment of awkwardness was smoothed over, and even the painful state of the heroine was no longer taken into account. The man carefully touched her forehead with his lips, checking to see if she had a fever. He became worried, realizing that the girl had a high temperature. I asked how bad she was now. Amelia, without hiding the truth, answered that it was very bad. It seemed to her that she would soon die completely. She reminded him that she had left a letter in which she asked him not to look for her. The Duke asked in an offended voice why she didn't like him. The girl thought to herself that his pleading look would just make her heart break. She asked her to forgive her. After all, lovers usually do this kind of thing. The man replied that he understood everything, and he began to smile contentedly. The Duke said he called a doctor for her, and he asked the girl to get dressed. He picked up Amelia's dress that was lying there from the floor, but I was very surprised to see a paper with a coat of arms pasted under a bow on the chest. He indignantly asked what this was and why it was on her dress, and he angrily squeezed her clothes in his hand. The dress was lying on the floor again. The Duke called Hayden's assistant, I asked him what was going on. He sat next to the dress and examined it. He promised that he would immediately set off to find out everything, and he asked what to do with the culprit when he found one. Killian ordered, of course, to kill him. The girl coughed to attract attention. Then the man changed his order. He said to burn the culprit. The assistant obligingly bowed to the master as a sign of acceptance of his order. A maid came through the door. She was carrying a folded stack of blue-colored clothes. Killian said that he had prepared clothes for her that should fit perfectly even when you are sick. The man asked if the girl could change clothes herself, but she replied that she might need the help of a maid. The Duke offered her his services. After all, he himself could help her. To which she replied that since the dress was a woman's, it would be better to get help from a woman. But he was joking. He answered jokingly that it was like taking off a dress, only in reverse. The man held the heroine by the shoulders through his jacket, and he argued that you shouldn't wear a dress over a wet nightgown. This was starting to irritate Amelia. She barked at him with all her might that it was enough to make his fantasies come true, and she demanded that he turn to the wall. The Duke timidly obeyed and stood turning to the wall, and the girl, quickly putting on her dress, thought that you wouldn't relax with it for a second. The Count and his wife looked into the door of their daughter's bedroom. They hesitantly informed her that the doctor had arrived, but a whole team came in wearing gowns and masks. One of them was older and wearing glasses. Apparently, he was their eldest. The gray-haired man said hello and introduced himself. He was the chief physician of Child Hospital, and his name was Paul Remian. He asked the girl for permission to examine her. She was a little confused, but agreed. She could not understand why so many people and the chief doctor himself came to treat her. The parents were surprised. They wondered how long their daughter had known Duke Child, and they understood that it took quite a long time, since he brought the best doctors on the continent to her. The girl made it clear to her family that she had no idea how this happened, and the doctor said that everything was very bad, and he shook his head in horror that she had gone to such lengths. The Count and his wife were shocked. They folded their hands in prayer and listened to the words of the famous doctor, and he claimed that their daughter would recover only if she received the best treatment and rested in the best conditions. He assured that they would not be able to provide her with such conditions. Just at that time, the girl was torn apart by a coughing fit. The Countess was going to sell her hair, and her father was already going to sell something too. They agreed to do anything to pay the necessary medical expenses, and the girl thought that everything was not so serious. The Duke is pleased with the effect produced on Amelia's parents. I asked the medical luminary where he would advise her to live while she recovered. The doctor said that the best place is Duke Child's estate. He promised that the girl would be taken care of there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they will provide the best treatment in the entire empire. The doctor claimed that there were the most wonderful conditions for patients in critical condition, and the Duke nodded in agreement. The girl thought that those two were the biggest liars in the world. Mother Countess was surprised. Father Count Dine specified that if their daughter moved to the estate, she would be able to survive. But the daughter sent them a mental message so that they would not believe it, that she just had a common cold. The Duke said that everything was clear to him, and since the head doctor recommends that the girl be treated on his estate, he will happily take her away right away. He voiced that it might be inconvenient for the Count's daughter to live with a stranger. The girl did not understand his idea, although she agreed with his statement. Then the man turned to her. In his hands was a huge bouquet of dozens of red roses. He said that the only way out in such a situation for Amelia was to become his girlfriend. Our heroine even forgot for a second that Killian Child is a person capable of achieving anything he wants. And he stood in front of her with a huge bouquet of flowers, cunningly proposing to her to become his bride. But Amelia didn't understand what the point was in him inviting her to start dating. And the Duke continued that he himself understands that flowers alone are definitely not enough for her to make a decision. He threw the bouquet over his shoulder at the assistant. He snapped something and his servants began to carry oak chests into the girl's chamber. They were quite heavy, so the two strong men strained with all their strength to carry them. The servants opened the gifts they had brought, and it turned out that each of the three were filled with jewels and gold. Amelia and her parents were amazed. They wondered how much it all might cost, and the Duke, pleased with the effect produced, claimed that he could give her everything she wanted. Our heroine had paralysis, but when she controlled herself, she began to refuse to accept all this, and the jaw that dropped in surprise was replaced by anger and waving his arms. The girl understood that even if the Duke liked her now, she still couldn't get involved in the plot. Therefore, she asked not to do this, that she doesn't communicate with him because of money. Killian reminded that it was she herself who told him so, and that was a completely fair remark. He clarified that he means not only because of the money. She replied that it was not 100% because of them. The man was positive. He was glad that the girl had no reason to reject him. He now saw no problem at all in either of the two cases. Our heroine grabbed her head. She called on the gods to help her. She reproached herself for digging her own grave. Father Earl Dine warned that if it was true that it was all about money, then he was categorically against it. That she shouldn't force herself to make sacrifices because of his debts. His daughter assured him that everything was completely wrong, and the Duke begged him not to worry so much. That his daughter that night for the first time. He didn't finish, he was interrupted by a girl's exclamation. She demanded that Kyle shut up. She screamed at him that he wanted to tell her father how she dragged him to that provincial hotel. The Count was unpleasantly surprised by his daughter's unchaste behavior. Killian said that it just happened that way, and the look was ready to suffer any punishment. The head of the family decided, what if she really likes him? Then it's worth thinking carefully about this. But Amelia asked to wait, and she dragged Kyle by his tie to talk privately. His shirt quickly came unbuttoned, revealing a beautiful and inflated male torso. There were many spectators, but everyone had the same expression on their faces. The Duke said that he could understand that the girl was sick now, but even in her sick state, this is no excuse for her disgusting behavior. She understood that a foul game was being played, and that it was some kind of strange shirt, that she just unzipped him at one point. It looked like she had no buttons at all. The mother cried that her Amelia had become such an adult unnoticed, and she offered to help her pack her things. Father Count Dine congratulated his only daughter with tears in his eyes. Amelia convinced them that they had understood everything wrong. They didn't listen to her. They said that when she was ready, she would come down. They still couldn't believe that their daughter had become so big, and they warned that the house had poor sound insulation. The girl couldn't understand why she suddenly began to worry about the soundproofing of their house. The doctors, too, were in a crowd in a hurry to leave the girl's room, wishing her a good day. She was even confused. After all, they had just claimed that she was terminally ill. But the door closed behind the last of the doctors. They were left alone with Kyle. Amelia asked how this happened to his shirt. She only lightly touched her. The man stroked his curves, seducing her with his sexuality. He said that he had prepared everything in advance. The girl began to choke again with a coughing fit. Killian sat her down on the bed and asked her to calm down for being so angry, and she asked him to button his shirt. The Duke fastened the buttons and believed that the girl liked his idea of unbuttoning. He asked her to admit that she wanted to be his girlfriend, and he advised him to make a decision quickly before he changed his mind. Amelia didn't want to admit it and asked why she was suddenly following his lead. She turned away from him and made an offended face. Killian recalled what the doctor said, that she has pharyngitis and it can develop into a rhinovirus, and he falls under a number of dangerous diseases. He argued that if such a disease is not treated, it can end very badly. Before the doctors arrived, the girl believed that she had a common cold. She held her head in horror. Now she understood why she felt so unwell then. And I thought that if she died in this world, it would be the end of everything around her. The girl understood that the most important thing for her now was to recover. Therefore, I decided to be the Duke's girlfriend, and after recovery do something special so that he himself leaves her. Drool. Eat with his hands. The man presented Amelia with an armful of roses. She was surprised, and at the same time he looked outrageously pleased. The girl agreed to his proposal to date. She accepted a huge bouquet of red flowers from his hands. The Duke had a happy and carefree expression on his face. He brought his face close to her cheek, quietly and tenderly speaking words of gratitude to her. His nose almost touched her temple. The girl felt his breath and even narrowed her eye a little. And the man was already saying in her ear that, by the way, her illness is also called a cold. Amelia was not yelling at him, but he said that it was time for them to go, since the carriage had already arrived at the front entrance of the Count's mansion. Killian grabbed the girl in his arms so unexpectedly that she didn't even have time to gasp, and he resolutely carried her barefoot to the exit of her parents' house. The parents advised their daughter to obey doctor's orders and take care of herself. She shouted over her shoulder that everything was not at all as they understood. Her mother wiped away tears of happiness for her child with a handkerchief. Amelia sat in the carriage, facing away from Kyle. She thought it was some kind of curse that she had fallen into his trap again, and it seems this time everything was much more serious. The Duke turned her face towards his. He asked what she was looking out of the window like that. He offered to look only at him now, since they were now officially dating. The girl sighed. She couldn't be mad at Kyle when he made that face, but everything should have been completely different. She asked what happened to his clothes then. After all, she barely touched her then. She expressed her guess that this was done on purpose so that the shirt could be easily unbuttoned. The man didn't answer her, but it was clear from his satisfied face that she guessed everything correctly. He reminded her that he could do anything she wanted. Amelia asked him not to do that in the future. After all, there were other people there whom he also embarrassed with his unbuttoned shirt antics. She never allowed this to happen, even when they were alone. Otherwise, she is not responsible for herself. The girl had a stern look, demanding unconditional obedience. Killian was upset. He said offendedly that he didn't like the orders. But then he began to smile, and he suggested that the girl take a nap. After all, the road was long, and he advised her to lie down like last time. Amelia understood that in any case she needed to quickly force him to break up with her. She told him that he might soon regret contacting her, that she's still a piece of sticky stuff. The Duke asked the girl when she would start clinging to him. She warned that she would stick her nose everywhere where she was not asked. She promised that she would constantly pester him with questions about what he did and who he met. It looked like the girl was determined to make his life hell. The Duke thought that since she was so interested in his life, then he decided to invite her to spend the day together, and he promised to warn his employees about this. He almost jumped with delight. Killian promised to do whatever she wanted, and the girl was surprised that he somehow reacted unpredictably to her promises and threats. The Duke said that if you remember the events a week ago, then she told him to wait in the room while she took a shower, and the girl thought to herself, why would he remember this? The man began nervously drumming his fingers to some rhythm unknown to the girl. He was clearly nervous but didn't want to show it. He claimed that he had to wait too long, and now it's unlikely he'll get by with a small reward. Amelia was all tense. She didn't want to bring up such a topic with him. The girl told herself not to lose her head from the provocation. I tried to pull myself together. She convinced herself to close her eyes so as not to fall for his pleading look. And then an idea struck her. She turned away and coughed a little. Then she reminded Kyle that she ran away then so as not to infect him. Amelia argued that it would be simply terrible if he got infected and fell ill from her. Therefore, she will have to live alone for a while when they arrive at the estate. The Duke scratched his head, not knowing how to get out of it to suit him. But he decided to accept her rules of the game. He said that, of course, her well-being is the most important thing for him now. He promised to wait patiently until she got better. The girl rejoiced to herself. It was her small victory. And Killian noted to himself how cute she was when she acted like that. The Duke remembered what Hyde had told him. He asked to speak with him before the gentleman went to Miss Amelia. He said that love is like a tug of war, and he believed that he couldn't do everything alone all the time. Killian asked to clarify whether it was necessary to push her away. Hyde stated in his teaching that love is unlike anything else in this world. But you should adhere to the rule and remember that too much taste kills the taste itself. Killian thought about those words then. After all, he saw a certain meaning in them. He asked if he therefore needed to pretend to be indifferent. But the assistant said that this was not exactly what he wanted to say. The man decisively said that he would go and confess his love to the girl, as if he did not care. The Duke's mentor and assistant in one person began to lose patience. He asked him to forgive him, and he said that he wanted to clarify the meaning of push away. He gave a lecture on the topic of carrot and stick. Amelia stood under the door, holding a tray with dishes and tea. She couldn't believe Kyle could speak so loudly. If she knew that Hyde helped him and explained everything, she would be grateful to him. After all, now she can feel at home in the Child estate. She was having breakfast alone, and I thought it was worth being realistic. She was aware that this estate was the best place in the world, and I was in seventh heaven. Her bathtub was so big that you could swim in it like a pool. The blue water simply beckoned her. The gold-plated taps were always polished, and fresh rose petals in the water. The estate's greenhouse reminded her of a greenhouse. There was even a small tea table with chairs. You could always enjoy greens with a cup of tea. And her bedroom was simply huge. A soft mattress, plenty of pillows, and fresh silk linen made it possible to have a good rest. Amelia always ate delicious food. It was like she was in a 5-star hotel. Meat, sweets, fruits, exotics. There were things on her table that she had never heard of before. And Kyle didn't impose himself either. So her life was just wonderful. She enjoyed the chicken and washed it down with red wine. The girl already thought that the man had lost interest in her. She admitted that it might be because they became a couple. But if she had known about the carrot and stick lecture, she would have been very touched. Killian grabbed his head and asked his assistant if he was sure that his scheme would work. After all, when Amelia was walking in the garden and accidentally met him, she didn't even look. And then he was luxuriously dressed. But Hyde argued that his master was mistaken, that the girl now enjoys being on the estate. And that was already a good sign. The Duke was surprised by this observation. Hyde continued. He thought that the girl was quite comfortable here, and he hoped that she would open her heart to him when she became completely comfortable here. The Duke agreed to wait. After all, his assistant's assurances sounded logical. But he was afraid that she might forget about him completely. Then Hyde came up with something. He began to whisper something in his master's ear, and he listened to everything with the most serious look. Killian liked this idea. He asked to prepare everything that would be needed to bring it to life. The girl was lying on the sofa and enjoying the beauty around her. The maid brought her a letter. She said that the Duke asked to give it to Miss Amelia. It seemed strange to her that he was sending her messages, even though they lived in the same estate. The Duke asked if she liked her room. He told her not to be shy to tell her if she was too hot or cold. He allowed her to use anything on the estate at her discretion. She didn't understand whether it was worth sending her a message through the servants, that she was already happy with everything here. And after that she began to receive such notes every day. She was still in bed when the servants brought her another one. It simply wished her a good day. Another day at breakfast they brought her the following. In it, he reported that doctors do not yet see that she is recovering, and he promised to ask the chefs to create a menu for her especially carefully. And when she was in the bathroom, they brought her a message. In it he said that he was bored. He expressed the hope that she would soon feel better, and she was already getting pretty tired of it. The girl walked down the corridor in only a robe and soft slippers. She remembered that in that novel he spent huge amounts of money. But the way he was now making her believe that she could change his future. She remembered that even at school she was not particularly popular. And she was a simple middle-class girl, not a leading lady. Amelia met the Duke at the door. She was a little surprised to see him. He said he missed her. She answered him sarcastically, that he missed her so much that in 2 weeks he never visited her. The girl wanted not to answer him at all, but she didn't want to seem rude. After all, they hadn't seen him for a long time. Amelia said she was going to drink wine, and she offered to join her. She asked that he did not visit her because he was afraid of getting infected from her. At the same time, hospitably pouring wine into both glasses. The Duke was indignant. After all, how could she think that he could refuse to meet with her for fear of getting infected from her? But the girl turned it all into a joke, answering that he could look at her at least once. She really wanted to tease him a little, and Killian said that it is very difficult for him to control himself when she is around. Amelia was surprised. She asked to clarify what exactly was difficult for him to control in himself. He answered that it was difficult for him to fight his desires. The girl asked him to repeat, which she allegedly did not hear. The Duke said that he really wanted to tell her in person. The girl thought that there was no point in making fun of him. The man said that he had been thinking about this all that week after her escape, and another 2 while she was sick. It seemed to him that he was simply interested in her, but now he was convinced that he loved her. Amelia realized that their conversation had taken a completely wrong direction. She was not happy with what she heard. After all, she definitely didn't need to know this. She asked Kyle to shut up. He couldn't understand why suddenly, and what actually happened. The girl said that his words had a bad effect on her. She thought that she would no longer be able to control herself. The man understood her in his own way. He asked what she wanted, so that he expresses his feelings differently than in words. Killian began to unbutton his shirt. He decided to show his feelings for the girl in this way, since she didn't want to listen. Then let her watch now. Amelia screamed for him to stop. That's not what she meant at all. She thought he was simply crazy. The man was about to take off his pants, but the girl stopped the movement of his hands. She asked him to stop. He stood in front of her with his torso bare, completely at a loss. The girl asked him if he had heard that she liked his naked body, but he answered that this happened at their first meeting. Our heroine admitted to herself that the man was indeed handsome, and the proportions of his body were simply ideal. The muscle definition was impeccable, and on top of that, his charming smile left no chance for anyone. The Duke noticed how the girl was looking at him, and he claimed that she would soon drill a hole in him. He asked if he should take off the rest too. The girl replied that people tend to admire beauty. Killian pulled his shirt around him, embarrassed. He asked what she thought was really handsome. Or maybe at least he looks good. Amelia thought to herself that how could he ask questions with such surprise on his face? An exclamation escaped her involuntarily. She said his face was beautiful, and his body too. That it would be possible to print on banknotes with his face on the front and his body on the back. And it would bring happiness to people to walk around and simply wave such banknotes. The Duke smiled. He liked the girl's original revelation. He told her that it was better to look at him as much as she wanted than to think about money with his image on the bills, and ideally he would prefer to belong entirely to her alone. But the girl backed down. She clarified that she thought his face was beautiful, and there is no need to belong to her entirely. The Duke said that he had completely forgotten, but the girl remembered. That when he confessed to the main character in that novel. He said that no one cared about his existence. Everyone despised him or worshipped him. But in reality, no one needed him in this world. The man believed that he was nothing without his money. The girl already regretted that she had said too much. She saw that she had touched a nerve. She shouted out loud to him that his appearance could feed the whole world. She clarified, "What I wanted to say is that anyone in this world would want to be with him just by looking at him once." She nervously scratched the back of her head from the awkwardness of the situation. The Duke was sad. He argued that she hardly knew how things were in the social life of those close to the Emperor. The girl said it didn't matter. That doesn't make him any less beautiful. Cunning ladies of Balzac's age could only be an exception. And so any girl could melt from one of his smiles. The Duke was completely sad, and the girl blamed herself for bringing him to this point. She sat him in a chair opposite the mirror. She told me to look carefully. And then she asked, how could one refuse such a man? She thought it was just some kind of nonsense to do such a thing. He asked timidly, that she wouldn't refuse him either. The girl again fell for his tricks. She said that he should still print his face on the banknotes, and she claimed that she was no longer so young. And soon she will overcome the age at which they usually get married. The Duke held her hand. He said that it didn't matter to him. What if he liked something? He wanted to get it at any cost. Amelia asked if he had similar desires towards her. The man began to hold her by the back of her head. The girl said, stuttering, that everything was completely wrong. And the man kissed her hand. He said that he really wanted her to be his. His face was serious and tense, and the girl asked not to look at her with such an expression. The Duke stood with one knee on the chair and held the girl's cheek. He recalled what she had just told him herself, that people tend to admire beauty. He looked into her eyes, and she could not tear herself away from his gaze. Their lips met in a passionate kiss. The girl was the first to break away from the pleasure. She asked Kyle to wait, and she said that she had had enough. He asked her to continue, but she thought that she had already lost her head from his words that people admire beauty. She asked herself, how can someone control themselves when such a guy is trying to fool a girl's head? Amelia deliberately made her face as indifferent as possible. She briefly said, "That's enough." She assured that it wasn't that she was interested. Killian agreed with how she would say it. He promised to restrain himself since she didn't want it. He said that he only wanted to express his love for her. The girl again began to succumb to his charm. I asked myself why he was so cute. He was technically trying to convey to her that he loved her, but he didn't use words. Amelia said she wouldn't rush. After all, they had just started dating. Killian asked to tell him when he can say words of love. The girl answered him that in 10 years. He claimed that he would accept this as her desire to live with him for at least 10 years. At the same time, he was so cheerful and sweet. Amelia accepted that the man won and she lost. She understood that she needed to stop arguing with someone so smart and cunning. She said that she was pleased to see him. She expressed gratitude for everything he did for her. Killian asked if she was going to bed already. She answered in the affirmative, adding that it was too late. The Duke took her in his arms and carried her. The servants peered out unnoticed from the door after the happy master. This was already a familiar case. After all, this happened for the third time. The girl herself, out of habit, simply remembered his gesture on some physical level, so her hands automatically locked themselves around his neck. I was surprised that I got used to it so quickly, but something was wrong. She asked Kyle what he was doing and where they were going. He recalled that she wrote to him that supposedly they were not suitable for each other, and he asked how she knew this when they didn't even try a couple of times. The girl did not agree to check compatibility at night. When she asks where he is taking her, the man replied that, of course, to his bedroom. She protested, claiming that she had no intention of sleeping there. At the same time, she struggled and jerked her legs. When the Duke opened his bedroom door, it was interesting to know what. After all, he was tightly holding the girl who was escaping from his arms. She saw a spacious room in a simple style in dark colors. He carefully laid her on the bed. The girl was still tense. The man decisively and quickly began to take off his jacket. He said that he wouldn't let her sleep. He said he missed more than just being able to tell her how he felt. The girl told herself that she would not fall into this trap again. And I decided to look the other way. Amelia examined the interior of the room, and she could understand why the room looked so empty, although it had luxurious furniture. She told herself that it was stupid to worry about someone without knowing their whole story, and she needed to hide this feeling. Killian asked why she was worried about him. The girl pretended that she did not understand what he asked, and she was surprised how he could read her thoughts. He gently touched her hair. He insisted that it is quite normal to worry about someone you care about. He told Amelia that he needed all of her, and he reminded me that he always gets his way. At the same time, he looked pleased and he kissed a lock of her red hair. His face was next to the girl's face. He looked her straight in the eyes. It was a dangerous moment. She didn't understand why he was now waiting for her consent, but it was certainly nice. The girl convinced herself that she shouldn't follow his lead, and she didn't care how much she worried about him and how handsome he was. And I decided to raise him. She knew that if she lost control of the situation now, he would always control their relationship. She asked Kyle to wait. She said that she was embarrassed that she was wearing only a robe. But turning her head to the right, Amelia saw that the Duke had prepared pajamas for him ahead of time. It was as if he was completely sure that she would be there, and she decided to play on his desire. She asked the man if he could turn away while she changed clothes. The man turned away. The girl threw the robe she had taken off in his direction. At that moment, he wanted her more than anything in the world. The girl was lying on his bed in a graceful pose. She said that she was done and that he could turn around. The pajamas fitted her curves, and the ruffle visually enlarged her already rather large breasts. His hand rested next to hers and his fingers intertwined. The girl gasped and he closed his eyes. She asked Kyle to calm down. He lay on top of her and said that he could not be calm when she was next to him. Amelia said that she would like to outline a few rules for their relationship. Otherwise, they risked quickly getting used to each other if they kissed and hugged when they met. The Duke insisted that he did not need any rules, and the girl began to flirt with him and make eyes at him. She said that if he had agreed not to follow her rules, she would have kissed him. But he was the first to kiss her on the lips. All she had time to do was groan. For a long time, he could not tear himself away from her. And then he asked if he could kiss her again. The girl said that now he must ask her permission before any action, and then wait until she counts to 3. But the man firmly answered her, no. The girl tickled his neck. She said she sympathized with him. After all, in this case, they will stop dating. His face became annoyed. The Duke lay down on the bed, burying his face in the blanket. He told Amelia that she was driving him crazy, and the girl understood that her heart might just break now. He grabbed his head and claimed that he did not understand why he needed to count to 3. But she convinced him that in this case, the element of attraction would remain, and this is important in the development of relationships. That thanks to him, he will look forward to what will happen, and this will make the process much more interesting. Killian argued that since interestingness was so important to her, it could be achieved in another way. But the girl hesitated. She stated that she did not want to feel interesting on a regular basis. The man was not happy. He said that this was not to his taste, but he promised to make concessions to her since it was so important to her. Our heroine was glad that she was able to insist on her terms. She thanked Kyle, but he was not at all happy, and the girl believed that she was almost at her goal. He asked why only she would count. Amelia said that if he wants to do something, then she will do the math, and vice versa. Naturally, she never intended to bring the count to 3. Amelia folded her hands in a pleading gesture and smiled sweetly at the man. She asked if he wanted to try it right now. He clarified that he just needed to voice his desire. And Kyle wanted to hug the girl. He said that he wanted to hold her in his arms until she felt like she was about to cry and start calling his name. She prayed to the gods. She reassured me that she would just try things with him and nothing more. And she said that she would count to 3. The girl leaned her hands on the bed, saying 1. Then she lay down, said 2, covered herself with her head and wished good night. Killian was outraged. He called her name. The maid entered the bedroom. Amelia sat down, covering her head with a blanket. The servant asked the master for forgiveness for distracting him, but she said that she thought it necessary to tell him that Miss Claire had just arrived. The door closed behind the servants, and the girl wondered who Claire was. But then she remembered from the book she read that Claire Child was the only one who survived besides Kyle. The girl was surprised that Killian's sister returned home. The man's face was thoughtful. Claire Child was the illegitimate daughter of the former Duke of Child. She was his firstborn, but her existence was kept a complete secret. The girl was so much like her father that he could not refuse her. Kyle himself did not know about his sister until that day came. It was necessary to prove sufficient strength to protect the status and wealth of the Childs, and only the strong were able to survive in this world. From that moment on, the race for the title of heir began. The eldest son died immediately after that announcement, and the reason was an apparent accident. But in fact, they helped him fall down the stairs. Then, on Kyle's coming of age, his second older brother, whom he trusted completely, attacked him with a knife. And after that, the guy locked himself in his room. He was hiding under the blanket, but most of all, his heart was wounded. It was then that an unknown girl appeared. She asked if the gentleman was hungry. She convinced him that he must survive in order to be able to protect the child name in the future, and she promised to help him with this. The guy asked why she decided to support him. She smiled and mysteriously said that she also wanted to protect the Childs. She asked him to simply promise her that he would not forget about her when he became Duke. In return, she promised to do her best. After that night, 2 brothers were killed and another died by accident. Their father also died soon due to illness. And through all those incidents, Kyle was nicknamed Duke Monster. And the first event he attended as Duke was the funeral of his brothers and father. Then that girl admitted that she was his sister on his father's side. She was wearing a dark dress and a black veil. Kyle yelled at her. He asked what she needed from him. The girl stood in front of him, and the wind blew her hair and veil. She replied that after living locked up, she has only one dream: freedom. Her face was serious and sad. She said that she wanted to be free. She had the same brown eyes as Kyle. Amelia recalled the words of Kyle's sister from the book I Want to Be. At the time, Claire was her favorite character in the novel because of her story. The man asked how long she would be absorbed in her thoughts about something extraneous. The girl came out of her reverie and asked her to forgive her, although the man himself was thoughtful. Amelia was sure that they were both thinking about the same person, but unlike her, Kyle felt hatred and anger towards Claire. The girl remembered that he did not abandon his sister when he became a duke, and they maintained good partnerships, and now everything was confusing, and she returned after traveling around the empire. The heroine knew that Kyle's past was complicated, and very sad even for the main character. The man was glad that she finally paid attention to him. The girl decided to make an exception today. She pinned the man to the bed with her finger. She said that she saw a big scar on him last time. She wondered how he got it. Kayla began to unbutton his shirt, but the girl stopped him, claiming that she did not ask to show him now. The man said that the trail was a gift from his older brother for his 18th birthday. He touched his hand to the strip on the lower left side of the abdomen. He claimed that he was sure that he was going to leave much more. But the plan failed. He said that the scar gets inflamed on every birthday, and he considered it an unforgettable gift. The girl sighed involuntarily. Kyle asked her not to make that face. He shared his premonition, that if she is next to him, the scar will not hurt on his next birthday. The man was naked to the waist. He smiled and touched the girl's cheek with his hand. He said that he asked her to stay with him, that he hopes to be with her to heal and feel better. The girl thought that he was wrong. After all, she was not the main character, that she is not the one he will be tied to forever. It was a clear sign of a devastating end. It was time to stop enjoying life and run away. Amelia studied Kyle's schedule for the past 2 weeks, and today he had a big business meeting. The girl stood at the door in a blue dress and with a travel basket in her hand. She resolutely grabbed the handle to get out, and she remembered whether she took everything with her on the road. Today she took water and put on her most comfortable shoes. She opened the doors and told herself that she was completely ready to escape. A knight met her on the threshold. He asked where Miss was going. She had completely forgotten about the Knights of House Child, and it looked like they were assigned to her as bodyguards. The girl claimed that she was going for a walk as always, and she acted amazed that she was being asked such a thing at all. The knight replied that this means they will accompany her as always. She was politely bowed to her by the whole group. The girl noticed to herself that today they were especially pestering. Men in armor told her that there was a dead end, and they suggested another turn, where the path led to the rose garden. The girl asked to be left alone with herself, but the guard replied that this was impossible. She asked the reason, claiming that the estate was safe. She asked if they suspected that she might escape. She showed them the bag, claiming that she specially collected it in case she suddenly gets lost in a vast territory. Amelia assured that she would like to explore places on the estate that she had never gone to before. The knight recognized her idea as excellent, since she was soon to become a duchess. Then she needed to explore her domain. The girl was amazed by what she heard about the plans for her fate. The knight said that it was obvious how the duke treated her as a future wife, that he values her very much, and she will blow their heads off if she even gets scratched in the garden. The girl decided that she needed to get out of here. She threw her basket over the fence, and she began to run away as best she could. The knight shouted after her to come back. She believed that the only way out was to jump over the wall. She decided to trust Amelia's physical fitness. After all, her father taught her, and he was the commander of the knights. The girl somehow miraculously jumped onto the wall. The knights remained below in complete amazement at her physical abilities. They asked Miss to stand still. They warned that it was dangerous, but the girl believed that it was more dangerous to stay on the estate where they were killing. The knights asked her not to jump there. They told me to come back. They promised that they would catch her and that she would not get hurt. But the girl asked if Kyle wouldn't be upset that other men touched her. Men in armor began to pass on the honor of catching the miss to each other, and it turned out that everyone was afraid of the master's wrath. It was a hopeless situation. Amelia made up her mind. This was not an easy step for her, although she had been developing it for a long time. Now that she was on the wall, it seemed to her that the distance to the ground was very great. The knight warned the miss that the wind was getting stronger, and he convincingly asked her to come down. But the girl completely refused to listen to healthy arguments. She stood on the edge of the wall. The wind, as the knight said, was intensifying, and the dress created some windage, and the fragile girl herself was quite light. Another powerful gust of wind simply knocked her over the wall. She flew backwards downward and did not intend to jump to her feet. But luckily for her, caring and strong hands were already preparing to catch her. The girl did not know that she was being watched from the other side of the fence, and I was preparing to feel hellish pain in my back. She grouped herself as best she could and closed her eyes, in anticipation of something bad. Amelia stood beside herself with fear. She even began to cry from fear, and next to her was a rather tall and no less attractive brunette. She said, sighing, "How lovely." The stranger told the girl that she had no idea who she was, but she claimed that she looked cute, and she offered to take a little walk with her. Her brown slanted eyes could not be confused with anyone. Amelia recognized Claire Child. This was her favorite of all the characters in the novel. Delight and admiration were written on his face. The girl folded her hands. Enthusiastic words escaped her about the beauty of the stranger. The brunette narrowed her eyes, looking at the girl. She commented that she was pretty enough. Amelia still couldn't let go of the excess of emotions. She told herself that she seemed to have fallen in love with this girl again. She simply idolized her and worshipped her image. But a small detachment of knights was already hurrying around the fence. They rattled their armor, and they created a lot of noise around. When they reached the ladies, they briefly greeted Miss Claire. The brunette asked the main one who this cute person was. The girl, ahead of the answer, claimed that she was just passing by. But the knight at the head of their detachment answered that it was Amelia Dine, that the Duke treats her like a future duchess, and they are officially dating. The girl was surprised that they knew her full name. It turned out that when they called her sister, they were just making fun of her. Claire continued to gaze openly at the girl. She claimed that she now understands why her brother brought such a charming girl to his home. Looking straight into Amelia's eyes and holding her head, she praised the girl. She said she was sweet and elegant, that her eyes are full of passion, and if you dress her up, there will be no chance of courtship. The brunette introduced herself as Claire Child, and she asked Amelia if she would agree to take a walk with her. Our heroine grabbed her heart, which was about to jump out of her chest. It seemed that the charming smile was hereditary in the Child family. She understood that she should not have agreed, because she was planning to escape. But Claire urged her to answer, asking what's wrong, and surprised that she could be against a harmless walk. Amelia felt sorry for her poor heart, which could have burst. But she understood that she didn't really have a choice now, and she didn't forget that it was Claire who killed all of Kyle's brothers. They were walking on the other side of the Child estate. The girl asked the brunette if it was true that she had just returned from the Tria Empire. She replied that, to tell the truth, she loves to travel, that the road gives her a feeling of freedom, and she can go wherever she wants. Claire invited the girl to try tea from the most famous store in the Tria Empire. She served her a cup of aromatic and hot drink. Amelia liked the taste of it. She thought that she was just going to black out, but she continued to enjoy it. The girl exclaimed in surprise. She said she tasted strawberries. Claire was pleased with the effect produced. Amelia thought about it. After all, her interlocutor was far from the nicest and friendliest character. She claimed that she was glad that Amelia was here, and that she just didn't want to come back because she would be here alone. The brunette assured that she had always dreamed of a younger sister, and she sat closer to the girl, although there was plenty of space. Claire put her arm around the redhead's shoulders. I asked her if she always drinks so nicely. She asked me to visit her more often, and the girl was afraid that her heart was about to explode. Amelia didn't know why, but she clearly liked her, and she made new plans to turn the current situation to her advantage. And the brunette scratched and stroked her red head. The girl knew that Kyle did not love his sister, because of whom everyone considered him a monster, and Claire believed that this was his burden as a duke, since he himself did not dare to get his hands dirty then. And if they didn't like each other, it was possible to get close to Claire so that the duke would hate her, although this plan was not ideal. Meanwhile, the brunette asked the girl to look at the dress from the City of Passion. Amelia was delighted with the gift, but she thought the outfit was too revealing for her. The brunette agreed that it was sexy, that such evening dresses are now trending in Madrid. Claire handed over a red and black dress and asked the girl to try it on. She was a little confused from surprise. Events unfolded very quickly according to an unplanned plot. The girl tried on a new thing from afar. They also had matching stiletto heels. What was most surprising was that everything fit in size and she looked simply stunning. The brown-eyed woman squinted, assessing the dress on Amelia's figure. She said that she knew that it would suit her and that she would look incomparable. The girl was a little embarrassed and felt awkward. The redhead grabbed her head. Despite some awkwardness, she understood that she looked both sexy and elegant in this dress. She looked at herself in the mirror. When I heard Kyle calling in the hallway, this was quite expected, but even here notes of cold were heard. Amelia greeted the man who came in and asked him how he was doing, but he was somehow distant and behaved unusually coldly towards her. His lips were pursed and his brown eyes were wide. He was surprised and overly tense, and then he turned around completely silently and left the room. The girl tried to return him and called him by name, but the door had already closed behind him. She didn't understand what she had done wrong, and why did he, so habitually loving and gentle, become so angry with her? And she began to get angry with herself. Then the girl thought that the fact was that he only told her about his sister yesterday, and today she is already spending time with her, and he feels betrayed. Amelia thought she was at fault and wanted to catch up with Kyle to apologize. She asked Claire to forgive her. She said everything was fine. She advised me to hurry up and go get my brother, otherwise he wasn't feeling well. The brunette waved her hand, and smiling, she only asked to visit her again. She had never seen Kyle like this before. I thought that she should have stayed in the capital longer since dear Amelia was here, and our heroine quickly ran after Kyle, despite the fact that she was wearing high-heeled shoes. She opened the doors and called his name. The man was sitting on a chair by the window, staring at the floor. It was clear that he was depressed and depressed. The girl hugged his shoulders from behind. She asked her to forgive her. She said that she was to blame for him, that she reminded him of the past. She asked how she could make up for her guilt. The girl swore under her breath that he was so angry with her that he didn't even want to talk to her. He asked to kiss him, This request surprised Amel. She hesitated a little, but she replied that she agreed to fulfill his request if it would make him feel better. He began to count 1, holding her hand, 2. He let go of her hand and said 3, smiling. Amelia's eyes were wide with surprise. She thought Kyle was mad at her. He replied that of course he didn't like how many men saw her on the way here. She was surprised that he wasn't upset, and the man responded by asking why he would do this. And it turned out that she was the one who was inventing all sorts of things for herself that in fact never happened at all. The girl caught her breath, holding her heart. Now at least there was no need to worry anymore. She replied that she was glad that she did not hurt his feelings. Kyle held the girl by the waist and gently hugged her, pressing her to him. He clarified that she came running here after him, because she thought that he was angry with her when he saw her with Claire. He said that she still continued to run away from him, although with all her appearance she shows that she would like to stay with him. The girl was surprised that her desire to escape was so obvious. And now she had no idea why she was so concerned about his well-being. Their legs were next to each other and their knees were touching. The girl realized that she had run here, not paying attention to the fact that her shoes were rubbing her feet, and her dress tore a little on the branches when she decided to take a shortcut. She narrowed her eyes in pain. The man sat Amelia on the windowsill. He confirmed her suspicions that he didn't like Claire, but he won't mind if he and she have fun together in his absence. The girl was surprised that he was stronger than she could have thought, and Kyle took off her shoes and wondered how she could not notice that she had rubbed her feet so badly. He was surprised that Alelia cared so much about him, but she just pouted and turned away so as not to reveal her true emotions and reasons. Kyle looked into her eyes. He said that, to be honest, he didn't like the dress Claire gave him. The girl did not understand where this conversation was going. The man gently touched her leg below the knee with his hand, and smoothly moved his hand, exposing her part higher and higher. He told the girl to guess what he wanted to do now. He gazed into her eyes, hypnotizing her to fulfill his desire. And he looked like a boa constrictor usually does before eating a rabbit. Amelia pressed her knees together and held her dress. She replied that it was a gift, but the man convinced her that it was already torn anyway. He said that he also prepared gifts for her, and he asked if she was paying attention when she ran here. And the girl realized that then she was immersed in her thoughts. But I remembered a mountain of boxes. She was now surprised that they were all meant for her. Kyle claimed that he wasn't sure what she would like. Therefore, I brought a lot of different things for her to choose from. Now he was smiling. Amelia realized that the man was rich, but this was already too much. She replied that he shouldn't have bought so much for her. Kyle was upset. He was offended that she liked Claire's gift, but it turned out that she didn't even want to look at it. And the girl realized that he had misunderstood her. She couldn't understand why he didn't like this dress, and I asked the man about it directly. She asked to clarify whether he thought that this style did not suit her. The girl again saw the same expression on his face. He asked what she thought. Why did he then blush and begin to avoid her? She replied that he was probably angry with his sister and did not want to see her gift. Kyle brought his face closer to the girl. He told her that she looked too sexy in this dress and it just drove him crazy. He argued that she probably did not have the strength to escape. And besides, he had already counted to 3 earlier. The girl had a confused face and the man held her chin. She was surprised that he waited until she caught her breath. He replied that otherwise she would not have had the strength to last long. He gently touched her cheek with his lips. He said that he was waiting for this moment, and he would like to stretch it out as long as possible. The girl involuntarily gasped. The man covered her face with kisses, gradually moving lower and lower along her neck and décolleté. Fortunately, the dress model allowed this. He held her by the shoulders so that she would not collapse under his pressure. She called him by name and wanted to say something else, but he interrupted her, having said that she will finish the rest for him later. Amelia was surprised. What did after mean? Then? And how long will this last? And Kyle continued to cover her lips with kisses. She thought that it would be nice if time would freeze and stop now. His face was next to hers. Eyes looked into eyes. The girl could not understand why he stopped. It was so nice. She decided that it was in vain that she did not run away from him then. Kyle said she had the question, "Why didn't we continue?" written all over her face. And the girl thought that if he knew, then why interrupt? He was pleased, but she was angry. He asked her if she wanted more, And she answered that a little bit was possible but no more. And he answered that everything was not like that at all. Amelia started to get angry. She asked when it was she, but Kyle didn't let her finish. He claimed that she kept pushing him away. The girl held him by the lapels of his jacket and he held her hands. She was surprised when she realized that she was clutching his jacket and involuntarily groaned. She was probably subconsciously worried about what would happen to her life if things continued like this. Kyle held her hand, and only now I noticed how pale her skin was. He asked her to tell me if there was a reason why she kept pushing him away. He pressed her hand to his forehead. The girl was touched. She didn't know what to answer the man to this. She caressed his hair. And she thought that if he hadn't been self-destructive, she would have locked herself in a room with him for a couple of days. But she understood that she couldn't tell him that. The man suggested out loud that maybe she didn't like it that first time with him. She emotionally responded that she really liked that time. She reproached herself that it was all because of a fiction. She convinced herself to apologize to Kyle. She wondered how she could not like it when he tried so hard. And how could the Duke be so insecure? The girl reproached herself that she would never think before saying something. And the man chuckled quietly to himself, shuddering, seeing how confused his chosen one was. Kyle was taking off his jacket, and he put it on Amelia. He said that he understood why she caught a cold then. She involuntarily gasped from such care. She started yelling at him. She said that she had to constantly take cold showers when she returned to her home to discourage thoughts of him. The man took her in his arms. He wondered what exactly she was thinking about then. But the girl turned away from him, not wanting to talk to him anymore. I decided that it would be easier to just shut up. The Duke brought his face closer to hers. I asked her what she still thinks about those things. He carried the girl down the corridor. This was becoming somehow familiar. She asked herself how it was possible not to think about him when he was so attractive and sweet. But she refused to comment on anything out loud. She understood that he was too nice for someone who had to destroy everything, and gently touched his ear. Kyle argued that she couldn't hope to sleep peacefully that night if she didn't stop touching him. The girl pulled her hand back, and she justified herself that she was just playing with his hair. He asked her not to smile so joyfully until her dimples appeared. Amelia asked why there were so many bands suddenly, and the man continued to carry her to the bed in his bedroom. He said that he was also against any prohibitions, and he reminded that she was a couple, and he asked to tell me at least why she was pushing him away. The man sat the girl down on the bed and sighed involuntarily. The girl was worried about him. His facial expression confused her. His hand pierced her hand with his fingers, crossing them and clenching them into one fist. He asked if this was what the girl wanted. She began to shout at him that they had an agreement for such a case, that he should have asked her permission first before taking her hand and crossing his fingers. He replied that he remembered everything, but now the matter was different. She should have told him earlier that she would like more innocent joys. She didn't understand how this could have anything to do with him taking her hand. The Duke said that artisans were invited to tomorrow, and she will be able to choose what she likes. The girl was confused. They were sitting on the bed and he was still holding her hand. The man clarified that they needed to choose wedding rings for their engagement ceremony. He said that if she wanted, she could also choose a wedding ring. He kissed her hand tenderly. The girl told herself that it was a dream and she didn't like it at all. She woke up in the morning, but her dream continued. The maid said it was time to choose shoes. The Duke also did not forget to remind her in the morning what awaited her. And he himself said that he needed to visit the city on important matters. He touched her cheek. He told her to get enough sleep and then pick out rings for them. But after this, she could no longer sleep. She had a headache. The maid was showing the girl a pair of shoes. I was surprised that she didn't like this couple, to which she replied that she liked them and they were beautiful, but they were very expensive. She doubted she could afford one of these as a student. The boxes contained shoes of different models, colors, and styles. Kyle's gift seemed too much to the girl, but that was just the beginning. The servants brought new boxes, freshly brought from the shops. The girl was in a stupor for some time. The maid brought her an outfit. The girl asked what it was, and she replied that this was underwear from a very famous company. The girl said that was not the point. It was too sexy for her taste. It was amazing how they could make such translucent layers. And she didn't understand at all why fur was sewn on it. Amelia thought that since the man didn't like Claire's gift, therefore she hoped that he would not ask her to dress her either. The girl is a little tired. And I told myself that perhaps I should take a break, she admitted to herself. I never thought that opening gifts could be so tiring. The brunette told the girl that she was as cute as always. The girl replied that she had heard this more than 100 times today. She thought that in the novel, Claire didn't like being at the manor, and she couldn't understand why she constantly came and sat with her for several hours. She asked why she thought she was cute. Claire told her that it was all because of her behavior, that seeing her reaction to things makes you want to tease her even more, that she would never get tired of looking at her expression at such moments. Amelia was embarrassed. She hadn't expected such a detailed explanation, and it sounded as if she was having fun in this way, which in fact it was. Claire told the girl that the artisans from whom she would rip out the rings had already arrived. Half a dozen men in suits and carrying suitcases entered the room. Amelia was surprised at herself. She expected that one or at most two people would come, and I understood that it would probably be more difficult than opening gifts. Claire briefly commanded the craftsman to open. The girl was constrained by the unusual activity and environment. Claire invited her to choose what she liked. The men stood before her with open red-lined suitcases and several boxed items of her choice. All the products were simply luxurious, but for some reason there was empty space for the central stone. The girl asked the artisans why these rings were not yet completed. The blonde replied that the Duke had not yet sent them the stone. Amelia clarified whether it would be a diamond or something like that. The jeweler spoke mockingly about the choice of diamond for the future Duchess. Claire supported him. She didn't think that Killian would send a simple diamond. Amelia wondered since when did a diamond become considered commonplace, but then she remembered that the book said about a special stone. But she never thought that the Duke would want to use the rare arite crystal. She thought it would be very expensive for engagement rings. Claire asked the girl how often she attends social events, but the girl didn't understand what was wrong with the question. The brunette said that a couple of weeks ago the entire continent was making noise that Duke Child was planning to buy the arite crystal for a huge sum. The girl was surprised that she knew nothing about this. Amelia suggested that Kyle might be buying the stone for himself, and his acquisition will clearly benefit his business. But Claire claimed that her brother had such a stone, having inherited it. From reading the novel, the girl remembered that Kyle positioned himself as a superhero who did not need the power of the arite stone. The book said that carrying a crystal was equivalent to having superpowers, not to mention its rarity. She assumed that the cost was hundreds of times higher than a high-quality diamond. It was said that even if someone got such a crystal, this did not mean that they would use it. It was necessary for him to fall into the hands of a strong man who dreams deeply about something. Only then will arite fulfill the owner's wish. For example, if a person was drowning and wished that he did not want to die in the water, then his wish would be fulfilled. The crystal gave him the ability to breathe underwater, or the ability to swim like a fish. But there were also some conditions for owning this crystal. After all, he came to people from the gods. One person could only own one such crystal. If someone gave you such a stone, to get rid of it you will need to obtain permission from the donor. Amelia decided that since Kyle was determined to actually use the crystal for the rings, then she would have to wear this for the rest of her days. Only if he doesn't let her leave. And she stood up abruptly and decided in this case to choose a ring into which it would be very difficult to fit the stone. So that during manufacturing the crystal can crumble, she began to carefully examine all the ring models. And she couldn't understand which one to choose. I couldn't figure out which one was the most difficult to make a stone for him. Amelia had never worn a ring before. The man showed her a classic engagement ring. He argued that this was very suitable for the Child family, and the stone that will be attached to it must be cut using the circular method. He claimed that in this way the mineral would sparkle very brightly. Amelia didn't know what the circle method was. The jeweler explained that cutting in this way involves creating 58 facets, and this will emphasize the natural beauty of the stone. He claimed that this method was complicated, but he undertook to cope with it. The girl was happy. She had no idea what the jeweler was talking about, but it sounded very complicated and she liked it. She shook hands with the artisan. She said that she wanted to rely on him. He answered the girl that she would not regret that she chose to use his services. Amelia asked to cut the mineral using the most complex circular method. After all, this will be her only engagement ring. But she herself hoped that the mineral would break during cutting and nothing would come of it. She thought that if arite would be spoiled because of her, then this can be used to distance himself from Kyle. saying that she feels guilty and cannot look him in the eye. The girl said goodbye to the artisan, and Claire said that she was so sweet in every action she did. She said that she understood her brother. Why is he rushing to get the rings done before the Thanksgiving banquet? Amelia did not understand why it was being tied to this date. She remembered Claire saying she came back just in time for Thanksgiving. The brunette replied that there was no apparent reason. It's just that her brother wants to carry out this ceremony as quickly as possible. But until that day, the emperor will not allow any celebrations to take place. The girl remembered that in the book the emperor was a rather strange person, and he won't allow the celebration to take place until his Thanksgiving banquet takes place. Amelia thought about it. She believed that in any case it was not worth pinning all hopes on it, although there was only 1 month left before the banquet. Her last hope now was the artisan. She mentally asked him to ruin the crystal. But a week later, on a sunny morning, the voice of one of the knights called her. He reported that a craftsman had come who was making her ring, and now he asked to meet with her. He asked her what to answer. The knight stood at the slightly open entrance door and waited for her further orders. Amelia was reading a book at the time. She was surprised that he managed it so quickly. After all, then he claimed that he would need about a month to work. The girl thought that something might have happened. She replied that she could meet with the artisan right now. She asked him to be brought to her. She thanked God that he heard her words. 2 knights brought the red-haired jeweler. He looked dejected and walked with his head down. The girl thought that the poor master had ruined the crystal and was now trembling all over with fear. She addressed words of greeting to the artisan who entered. She said that she was ready to talk to him as he asked. She promised herself that under no circumstances would she offend him. "Man, ask Miss to get ready." Amelia said she was ready for anything. The man opened the box. He said that he no longer had the strength to hide it. The girl argued that all people make mistakes. The man abruptly opened the box in front of her. She was extremely surprised by what she saw. The craftsman asked her to just take a look. He boasted that this was his best work in his entire life. On blue velvet, there was a finely crafted ring with a blue central stone. Our heroine's face was sour. Her idea failed. The man asked her opinion. He insisted that he tried his best. Neither ate nor slept, and child supported him morally in every possible way. The girl expressed delight in response, and I thought to myself how much money Kyle invested in this. She was in a hurry to close the box with the ring. The master asked the miss to try it on. Amelia replied that this was a ring within a right crystal, that once she puts it on, she won't be able to take it off without the Duke's permission. The girl said that she would like to preserve her emotions of admiration until the ceremony, and she herself hoped that someone would steal that ring before that time. Killian appeared at the door. He asked the artisan if the ring was ready. The girl wondered why he appeared now. Kyle asked to show him a piece of jewelry. The master only asked to be careful. He believed that this was the best job of his life. The ring really was amazing. It glowed with some kind of blue light, either from the surface of the water or from a distant star. The Duke was delighted. He held the girl's hand, but she asked Kyle to wait. He replied that the size should of course fit, but it would still be better to check how it would look on her hand. He carefully placed the ring on her left ring finger. The girl even closed her eyes from the bright glow of the stone. Amelia thought that was it, and she realized that she really felt the power of the arite stone. She carefully examined the ring on her finger. She was interested in which of her wishes would come true. After all her instincts screamed about the need to run away from everything dangerous. And so I thought about the ability to teleport or move at the speed of light. The Duke held her hand and also admired the stone. She heard, "It suits her very well. Any decoration will look great on her. I wonder if she liked it too." She replied that she liked it too. And again, she responded as if she had read my mind. The man's face was confused and his lips were tightly closed. The Duke replied that in that case he was glad, and tenderly kissed her hand. The girl heard, "But I would prefer to kiss her all over, and not just her hand." She asked Kyle not to say such things in front of strangers, but he assured the girl that he was silent. The girl turned her head in all directions. She heard again, "She can ask everyone to come out and kiss her, or maybe she doesn't stop at kissing." She asked what silent meant. "It won't work out. I need to take her to my room." The girl looked at the smiling Kyle. She realized that he was indeed silent. He tucked his hand under hers. On his finger there was also a ring with a rare mineral. The girl thought that it was all about a right. Amelia realized that thanks to the stone, she could read the Duke's thoughts. "And when we get there, I'll put her to bed," he dreamed in his thoughts. And the girl was horrified by her new abilities. She was surprised that a man would think about such things while maintaining a completely innocent face. She took her hand from him, commenting that he had seen enough of the stone. But when the hand was no longer in contact with Kyle, the girl stopped hearing his thoughts. The man involuntarily gasped at her sudden movement. He claimed that the ring suits her very well, and he asked what his look revealed. But the girl was surprised, because now she could not read his dirty thoughts. But now she could not be fooled by those tricks. Amelia thought to see what it would be like if she took his hand again. She replied that he could watch as much as he wanted, since he had bought her such an amazing ring. And she gave him her hand. When she held his hand again, she heard, "I can't wait any longer." Her face was frightened. The man touched her cheek and she dodged, but she continued to hold his hand with intertwined fingers. The girl closed her eyes as hard as she could. The Duke brought his face close to hers. He carefully touched her golden strands of hair. Then he stroked her cheek with his palm. The girl brought the man out of his thoughts by calling him by name. A second ago it seemed to her that he was about to kiss her. He defended himself by saying that he just wanted to straighten her hair. "She might not like it if I don't ask permission before kissing. I don't want to anger her." She heard his thoughts again. Amelia was surprised. It turned out that the person who could destroy everything retreated because she might not like it. She realized that the crystal was definitely behind what happened. She asked the maids to forgive her, and since the Duke thought that she needed to fix her hair, she asked the maids to help her with this. The girls in uniform were happy to help her. When the maid touched Amelia, straightening her hair, she heard her thoughts. She was delighted that Miss asked for a favor and admired her. She did not see anything surprising in the fact that the Duke was crazy about Amelia. I thought the girl was beautiful and attractive, and she noticed that recently they almost had a kiss. Our heroine received confirmation of a right's strength. She could now read the thoughts of those she touched, and it didn't matter what exactly the touching took place. This confused her a little. The maid said that everything was ready with the hairstyle. The girl briefly but positively thanked her for her help. Kyle asked her if she really liked the ring. The Duke said that when he heard she liked the design, he asked a craftsman to make it a little faster. She remembered the master's words that he worked day and night to finish. The girl assured Kyle that she liked it. She sincerely thanked him, showing off the ring on her hand. The man said that if so, then maybe he deserves a reward from her. He offered to kiss him on the cheek. The girl involuntarily groaned. She mentally told herself that she could no longer refuse such a thing after hearing his thoughts. But after that, she already told herself that now everything doesn't matter to her. And grabbing him by the lapels of his jacket, she pulled him towards her and timidly began to kiss his lips. The man just let her do it. The girl had already pulled away from his lips, but he continued to hold her head by the back of her head. She heard him think again, "I can't believe it. She kissed me for the first time." Now he was kissing her. It was a long and passionate kiss, and the girl was just hoping for a light smack. She began to moan with pleasure and slight arousal. Amelia held the man by the neck. She had no intention of tearing herself away from him, and I thought to myself that he was simply a divine kisser. She read his thoughts. "Amelia Dine, I want you." The girl's eyes widened at the Duke's overheard carnal thoughts, and her heart took a beat and froze. Killian held the girl by the hips and she held him by the shoulders. Both looked into each other's eyes without looking away. It was a revelation to her that he really wanted to have carnal pleasures with her. She remembered that there was only one time when she herself felt his desires. But due to the fact that the book already had a main character, then she tried not to take everything seriously. But now she read his thoughts, and she realized that the person in front of her has his own feelings and emotions. The girl paused, which the Duke understood in his own way. He just started smiling at her. Then he lowered his head to her hair and kissed it briefly. "Is that all? Not enough. I need to control myself if I don't want her to hate me." She heard his thoughts again. Amelia tried to push all thoughts away from herself. She asked herself how she could reject him now after hearing what she had heard. The girl realized that the Duke was really committed to a serious relationship with her, and not with the main character. Kyle asked her if she wanted to continue wearing the ring. She answered negatively. She said that she would take it off right away, She asked him to help her with this, and she extended her left hand to him. Killian thought about it, and the girl reproached that she didn't follow her thoughts, and it just came out of her mouth again without control. She understood that because of what she had heard, all her thoughts were now confused in her head. Amelia was getting better. She said that she really didn't want to take off his gift, but she was afraid that she would quickly get used to him and would not admire him as much as the first time. She understood that she was mistaken and mentally asked him not to pay attention to it. The Duke beamed with joy. He was surprised that the girl, like him, was looking forward to their engagement ceremony. The girl hesitated, but then answered in the affirmative. She smiled, and I thought to myself that this could be the day of her funeral. Evening was falling over the child mansion. Amelia said that she seemed to have done nothing, but was tired. The Duke suggested going to bed early. He reminded her that she had many urgent matters tomorrow. Amelia picked up the skirts of her dress and quickly ran. She said that she would probably listen to his advice. But the man grabbed her hand by the wrist. He said that only with him. "I won't let you escape." The girl heard his thoughts. She gasped involuntarily. Her plan to sneak away from him failed again. Kyle promised her that they will just hold hands until they fall asleep. The girl was surprised by this turn of events. She mentally begged him not to be so nice. There's no chance we'll just sleep next to each other. She involuntarily overheard his thoughts, and she already imagined the damn horns on his head and the woolly tail behind his back. She told herself that she would stop laughing at her own words. The man let the girl walk in front of him into the bedroom. The Duke sat dressed on the edge of the bed. He offered to help her remove her ring. He patted his knee, urging her to sit there. But the girl couldn't understand why she needed to sit down like that for him to take it off. She told herself that she needed to remain patient if she did not want to hear his thoughts again. The Duke kissed her hand. He claimed that for the first time he was looking forward to the Thanksgiving banquet. He gallantly kissed her hand. Amelia was surprised. From the book, she knew that Kyle did not like to attend all sorts of banquets and social events. And there was a reason for that. After all, people gathered there who wanted to gain the wealth and power of the Child family. Besides, everyone considered him a monster duke. Therefore, he tried in every possible way to avoid participation. Amelia asked if he liked this holiday, and he answered that only because they would go there together. He claimed that he was also afraid that some other guy would take her away. "I think I'll be able to enjoy the holiday since I won't be there alone." She heard his thoughts. "I want everyone to know about our relationship so that I can put a ring on her finger as soon as possible," thought the man, removing the ring from the finger of his chosen one. The Duke took the jewel to the box on the table, and the girl noted to herself that he had changed. She didn't even believe that he would begin to rejoice with her in something that he had not noticed before. The Duke was closing the box with the ring. He promised to keep it with him until their future engagement. And the girl said to herself that it would all end with him destroying this world anyway. She had no idea what it was about him that could affect Kyle so much. She realized that he was no longer cold and cruel as he was described in the book. He asked if the place on her finger seemed empty. The girl answered negatively. But the man thought differently. He suggested that she put on some other ring before the engagement. Amelia found it difficult to resist how sweet and distant he was from his fate in that novel. She wondered if it was really worth pushing him away from her. After all, he was not the same as in the book. The man said that he wanted her to wear a sapphire or emerald ring, and the girl wanted one thing, for the man to belong to her alone. He said that he had heard about her, that she doesn't particularly like balls and parties. The girl was surprised. She didn't remember this in the book about her heroine. Kyle recalled that she stopped enjoying events after the incident at the debutante ball, but he thought it was just stupid gossip. But Amelia said he was right. She had forgotten about the incident described in Amelia Dine's diary. At a debutante ball where counts and countesses were selling their gold, a girl fell down the stairs. The girl smiled. She assured the Duke that everything would be fine this time because he would be by her side. But remember she herself that situation earlier. She could use it as a reason not to go. Killian beamed with happiness. He argued that of course she could trust him, and he began to hug her from the excess of emotions that washed over him. Amelia decided that since he liked it so much, it was the least she could do. He said that starting tomorrow he would begin preparations for the banquet. He decided so, since he will introduce his bride to everyone. The girl replied that she did not consider it so necessary, But the man had his own unbreakable decision, and she had to give in. It was a clear night with moonlight and stars just before the banquet, and our heroine understood exactly what Kyle was preparing for. Women's feet walked along the garden path. That time Amelia was literally pushed to go for a walk in the garden. She drank some wine in the rose garden, and now, slightly tipsy, she was enjoying the simple joys of life. After sunset, she returned to the mansion. Kyle and Hyde met her at the door. The girl said that she took a walk in the garden because she heard that the roses bloomed beautifully there. I asked what he was doing here. The Duke claimed that Hyde taught him to dance, but he couldn't do that at all before. The assistant confirmed that they were practicing, but the girl didn't think they were dancing at all, especially the butler, who was not a couple. She found it strange that Kyle couldn't dance. The Duke argued that this was not a simple matter, and I thought that he was unlikely to succeed even after training with Guide. He told the girl that he would like to be her ideal partner. Amelia understood that since he avoided participating in such events, it was logical that he could not dance either. But that didn't matter now. She was a little drunk but offered to help him. Kyle didn't believe it was true, and the girl was already dragging him by the hand and calling him to follow her. Music was flowing from somewhere above. The girl chuckled, because she had already trained with Claire, who often attended banquets. The man took a wrong step and groaned. Then he began to grab the girl's hand, trying to maintain his balance. Amelia said that he doesn't seem to know how to lead in a dance. He admitted that for now, yes. Amelia assured that Duke Child, the favorite of all women, should be able to dance the waltz better than anyone. But he claimed that he did not need other girls. The girl claimed that now she is leading the dance alone, and the man noticed that she seemed to like it. She claimed that she would like to switch places. The man was surprised. He began to smile. The final chord sounded and the music died down. The girl called Hyde. The Duke made an unexpected movement to end the dance as if for a beginner. Kyle said, looking into her eyes, that since she wanted him to hook up, so be it. He said that since in her opinion he was bad at waltzing, he was going to take her to bed and show her his class there. Women's shoes stood near the bed. The fingers intertwined into one fist. The girl said he couldn't do it, but the man said that it seemed to him that he could do anything. Our heroine repeated to herself that she shouldn't. The Duke touched her earlobe with the tip of his finger. Earrings joined the shoes on the floor. The girl could not understand why she should push him away. The man bared his torso, and he was wonderful. He asked if she would count to 3 this time too. Amelia answered in the affirmative. She said 1, 2, 3. The Duke was already above her. The girl held him by the waist. She gasped. The man asked him to tell him if she was against it. He promised to back down if she was against it. After all, he loved her so much. The girl was sitting in front of him on the bed in a dress. She asked Kyle why he stopped, and she asked him to continue what he started. Amelia wrapped her arms around the Duke's neck and began to kiss him passionately. He asked her to wait. He quickly opened the drawer with his hand. It contained sweets in candy wrappers. The girl realized that these were the candies for contraception. It was enough to eat one for complete protection. The Duke held a cherry-colored candy in his mouth. He hovered over her, licking his lips. The girl asked what they tasted like. He asked her if she wanted to try. He passed the candy to her with his mouth along with a kiss. But their kiss dragged on, and they both liked it. The candy was already in her mouth. A bare-chested man was on top. He kissed the girl on the bed, and outside the window the late foggy evening had already descended. When it was not yet completely dark, the girl was under the blanket. The man lay at her side and hugged her. She thought that when someone tries to seduce her, her strength simply leaves her. She decided to stop rejecting Kyle, but she understood that she shouldn't have given herself to him so quickly. She admitted to herself that it was very cool. She decided that if she continued to live in the child estate, in this luxurious place, where everyone, both the servants and Claire, made her life comfortable, but she herself didn't do anything about it. Although it didn't seem to her that Kyle was leaning towards self-destruction, but she still couldn't afford to live off him, and she also had to remember about her family's debts. So she decided to become independent. The man had already woken up and was stroking her waist with his hand. He asked what she was thinking so deeply about. She laughed it off without answering him. He claimed that he saw something bothering her, but she decided to hide her plans for the future from him for now. The girl saw his face and realized that some thought had clearly struck him. He asked her if she was thinking about having a child. deciding that this is what worries her. Amelia realized that he was asking about their future child together. But she pretended that she didn't understand, and she asked him why he should have a pet. But the man replied that he did not need a pet. Then the girl asked why talk about the child. The Duke scratched his head. He believed that the child would be beautiful and like her, but I thought that it was probably too early for them to think about it. The girl covered her face with her hands. She thought that it was too early to even talk to them about children. It looked like they were in a race, and her partner was clearly not familiar with the concept of a speed limit. Amelia reminded him that they weren't even married yet. She couldn't understand why he suddenly spoke so harshly about the child. After all, in the novel he didn't even think about this. The man replied that if some details were omitted, the child could make them a complete family. And Amelia Dine would then become his forever. The man gently touched her cheek and smiled. The girl looked a little confused. She lowered her head, reminding him that she was only with him for the money. The man thanked her for reminding him. He argued that even if he goes bankrupt, then even their grandchildren will be able to lead a decent life on his savings. He beat himself in the chest with his fist. The girl didn't really like this. Kyle continued to reason that if she only needed his money, she would strive to become his duchess as soon as possible. And in order to realize her selfish plan, she would seduce him in every possible way. He asked if the role of his bride was enough for her. After all, he had already repeated many times that he could give her everything she wanted. The girl could not understand what happened to his character. She admitted that he could have hit his head. They were sitting on the bed. The man was wearing a terry robe, and the girl was wearing underwear and a transparent peignoir. He asked him to forgive him for bringing up the topic of children, and I realized that such issues can be resolved together. The girl asked where such knowledge came from. He answered that it was from books. 10 Steps to a Happy Family and 19 Tips for Loving Husbands. Amelia grabbed her head. She couldn't understand where he opened these books. The man said that she need not worry about the child, and if she's still worried, he can ask him to make her some hibiscus tea. The girl remembered that this is the kind of tea that 100% guarantees the absence of pregnancy. The Duke, with the most serious look, insisted that he would become a good father. The girl was surprised. After all, in the book, the hero Kyle didn't even think about heirs. He was afraid that he would not be able to become a good father to them, repeating his mistakes and giving them the right upbringing. He was also worried that the child might bring back his childhood memories. The girl asked the man a direct question, whether he wanted to have children. The Duke lowered his eyes. He assured that he was actually worried that it would be too cold to treat the baby, because that's how his father treated him. He placed his hand on top of hers. Kyle assured the girl that he could not treat the child she gave birth to badly. He said that he loved her very much and wanted her to always smile. Amelia turned away to hide her true feelings. She asked what if she didn't want to have children. He said that his heart completely already belonged to her. The Duke assured that if they had children, he would love him or her, especially if they looked like the beautiful mother. The girl wondered, looking at him, how much pain he had endured throughout his life. The man saw her sadness. He asked what happened. He asked me to look at him. But she foresaw what he wanted to tell her, that he doesn't want to be like his father, and that he is ready to do anything so that his child does not experience the same thing that he once felt himself. She couldn't push him away any longer. She looked at him lovingly. The Duke himself was a little confused and surprised, and the girl has already decided everything for herself. She extended her hand to him. What even if Kyle leaves her for Vanessa in the future? She hugged him, and she promised herself that until then she would love him with all her heart. The peignoir fell off her shoulders. Amelia smiled. She thought that even if Kyle left her, she wouldn't be sad and heartbroken for long. And the man was a little confused by such a surge of the girl's tender feelings. He promised that as long as he had her beloved, he would not become as cold as his father. And he began to hug her back and hold her close. By the way, he asked if she hugs everyone so warmly. The girl completely hung on his shoulder. She replied that she had no idea. After all, she has normal body temperature, and she hasn't hugged anyone for a long time, so I wasn't sure how other people felt. Killian pulled the girl away from him. He clarified what worked, and he was her first. The girl just smiled in response. She realized that she had dug a hole for herself. Amelia began to unroll the bed and crawl under the covers. She complained that her strength suddenly left her. She claimed that if everything continued like this, they would sit like this until dawn. She wished him good night and covered herself warmer with a blanket. She decided that tonight had enough events for her. The Duke sat and looked at the girl. He said that she might not answer him. He was sure he knew the answer. She turned her head sharply in his direction. I was surprised where his awareness and confidence came from. Kyle's face expressed bliss. He said that he remembered their first night in detail. The girl thought that this meant she was not so good that time. She jumped up and sat up abruptly on the bed. The Duke pretended to be indifferent and began to climb under the blanket himself. He asked the girl why she got up. After all, I wanted to sleep. He said that he himself was already sleepy. The girl quickly straddled him. She sat on his legs. She said he infuriated her. And now he doesn't even think about just falling asleep. Kyle started kissing her. He said that he wouldn't let her do this either. She realized that he had deceived her, and she fell for it. The man was already on top. He kissed her lips and face long and passionately, and the girl was not against his caresses. Every day she fell into his sweet traps. Finally, the day of the banquet arrived. Claire was in charge of all the preparations at the mansion. She argued that ribbons would suit Amelia better than lace. The brunette was already dressed and had her hair done. She examined the dress before giving it to the maid to dress the girl. The red-haired girl was sitting on a chair already in a dress. She admired Claire. I thought she was even more beautiful today, compared to the queen. After all, she was her favorite ever since reading that book. Claire asked the girl why she wasn't looking at her so intently. Her bangs fell over her brown eyes, and the hair was picked up and decorated with a red jewel. She approached the girl and began trying on blue jewelry on her hair the color of a ripe ear. But she did not dare admit that she admired her beautiful face. Amelia remembered what she had said earlier. Supposedly she came here because of Thanksgiving, and she asked if she was going to leave later. Claire continued to accessorize her golden hair with blue jewelry, and for a moment the girl already regretted that she had said too much. But she asked why she was so damn cute, and she began to pat her cheeks. She claimed that although she loves to travel, she would never want to miss the engagement ceremony of her beloved Amélie. She expressed confidence that the girl would be irresistible in that dress. Our heroine did not understand since when she became her Amélie, and she believed that if she continued to call her that, then... But they kept patting her on the cheeks. The girl began to hug Claire around the waist. She said that she simply loved spending time with her, calling her sister. The brunette was surprised. She was asking Amelia what she had just done, and since she called her sister, then she asked her to continue to call her that too. The girls hugged each other in agreement. Killian came in and asked what they were doing here. Amelia herself did not notice when he entered what she heard and saw from what was happening. Brother and sister looked at each other unkindly, and the girl looked warily, first at one, then at the other. The man asked Amelia if she was ready yet. She replied that thanks to Claire, she had already managed it. The ladies looked confused, and Killian argued that if so, but the girl interrupted him. She called him with her and dragged him to the mirror. She stood in front of the mirror and asked if it suited her and how she looked. The Duke shuddered and swallowed nervously. The girl, seeing his reaction, was surprised that he didn't like it, but he replied that there was no chance that he wouldn't like it. He assured the girl that she was beautiful. Amelia wanted to listen to his praises. He continued to shower her with praise. Elegant, but then he hesitated. She didn't understand why he was so embarrassed today, and for this she wanted to tease him even more, giggling. Amelia was between the childs, and it seemed to her that they each struck the other in the forehead with their gaze. It seemed to the girl that she was able to switch the man's attention to herself, but they still glared at each other. Kyle asked his sister her opinion. She thought for a moment. She glanced briefly at the maid. She realized that now it was her turn, and she expressed that Mrs. Beauty is so amazing that words cannot describe it. But she thought that shiny clip with ribbons on her golden hair looked simply amazing. She expressed confidence that even in poor lighting she would shine. Claire and Kyle listened in surprise, but the maid continued that the dress is creamy pink, which Miss chose after returning to it 7 times among others. It sways when you walk, and undoubtedly Miss will be the prettiest among all the guests invited to that banquet. Claire also wanted to add that the most expressive part of the outfit is the emerald brooch and diamonds on the girl's chest. They show the wealth of the child family, and her color matches the color of Amelia's eyes and adds depth to them. Kyle chuckled in confusion. Why didn't anyone notice the silk gloves that complement the look so wonderfully? The brunette thought that her brother was no mistake. She voiced that it would be a good idea to give the girl a fan, since she put on such a seductive and sweet perfume. Kyle thought that a fan with griffin feathers would fit perfectly, since it was very soft, and he wanted to add something to her. But Amelia covered her ears with her hands. She wanted them to finally stop. Kyle told his sister that he thought her idea was great, and she expressed to him an idea about shoes. Our heroine did not notice since when they began to communicate well. A carriage with a pair of horses rode along the path. The girl was glad that they had finally left. She was already exhausted and sighed. Claire noticed that she was pale and was worried if she was okay. Amelia assured her that everything was fine, but she was just a little nervous. The brunette gave her advice and instructions, but her words made the girl even more scared. Claire said that high society is like a battlefield, that if she misbehaves, she will be torn to pieces. There was a rose petal on the girl's shoe. Claire pointed her finger at him and asked what they would do with him. The girl thought for a minute. She answered in confusion that he was beautiful and just needed to shake him off, and she did so, moving her leg. A petal rose on her dress in gusts of wind. The brunette emphasized to her what can happen when she lets go of something just because it is tiny and beautiful. The petal was carried away by the wind when it was shaken off the dress, and when he lay down on the path, Claire crushed him with the sharp heels of her black shoes with rhinestones. She said that if someone looks down on her, then it is worth fixing the problem, because simply pushing away will not be enough. Maybe the same thing will come back. She taught the girl to step on the problem so that she could not even think about returning to it again, and the child family will take care of the consequences. Amelia smiled in delight. But I told my sister that she scares her a little. The girls were approaching the carriage. Claire said that the Duke's bride should know that others will know about her every move. She replied that she understood all the responsibility that now fell on her. Amelia had no idea then how much that advice would really be useful to her. The carriage departed with the clattering sound of noble animals' hooves. Kyle and the golden-haired girl sat on the same bench, and Claire sat opposite them. The clatter of hooves could be heard. Amelia looked out the window. Her own reflection was visible in the glass of the carriage. She was the first to see the imperial palace. Thinking about him, she got the impression that she was driving into a minefield, and the first mine were the nobles invited to the banquet. They all whispered as one behind Kyle's back, discussing his character, style, manners, property, environment. She considered the second mine to be Prince Burblebon de Gil, known as Bertie. It was because of him that Kyle started the war in the novel. Bertie's mother was the first empress and the most beloved among other women, but she died when her son was born. She was from the child family, Kyle's aunt. Therefore, in their youth, Kyle and Bertie spent a lot of time together, and Kyle considered him his only friend. But after the death of his wife, the emperor lost his mind, forgetting about his duties as a ruler. Therefore, many of the child family soon appeared in the palace, and one could understand the feeling of insecurity from their family. And then one day, Bertie took a step that radically changed Kyle. He invited all the nobles to his birthday, and he sent a letter to Kyle with the wrong address. The Duke came to the appointed place with expensive gifts. He didn't know then that no one would come there. And to top it off, the prince, grinning, walked with his entourage there and made fun of Kyle. Bertie gave him the finger and insisted that he never considered him his friend, and that he always considered it his wallet. After all, it was necessary to somehow pay for the whims of his sisters. The prince pointed his finger at the Duke. He argued that it doesn't matter how rich he is. After all, he was the prince of this country, and I was in a hurry to remind him of this, and he advised me to know my place in future. The third and final mine was Kyle himself, with his complex character. Especially after that incident, he realized that people were using him for money, and they don't care about him. Since then, for a well-known reason, he stopped expecting anything from others, and he went over to the side of destruction. Then he started a war with his own money, which eventually practically destroyed the whole world. And his only and main goal was to show people what it was like, when everything they have thanks to the money they cherish so much turns to dust. And therefore, our heroine, knowing this, considered the Thanksgiving banquet to be the beginning of the symphony of defeat. Kyle took the girl by the hand and asked if she was okay. She replied that she was a little nervous. I asked if the prince would be present at the banquet. The Duke denied this, saying that he was punished for mischief. The man was surprised that Amelia was so worried about this. She replied that he was a prince, and what would worry her, and she would be very worried if she had to introduce herself to His Majesty. And she thought that she would be even more worried if Kyle and the prince had to date. The Duke beamed at the idea. He said that since she cares so much about it, then he could make sure that the prince would not appear at any events in the future. But the girl assured him that this was unnecessary. Taking him by the hand, she realized that the world needed love and peace. She argued that people should not start wars, and she asked him about it, looking into his eyes. The man repeated love after her and thought deeply. Later, he nodded his head in agreement. Claire intervened in their conversation. She argued that peace is good, but she reminded, smiling, that now they were going to the battlefield. This was a blow to Amelia. She completely forgot that Claire was also riding next to them. Kyle was also unhappy that she interfered in their conversation. Finally, they were already there. The Imperial Palace sparkled with its splendor. There were a lot of people in the banquet hall and live music playing. Some were already dancing. There were even children. Killian introduced Amelia to secular society as his bride. That she is the daughter of the Earl of Dyne. The girl meekly and politely introduced herself, smiled, expressing her joy at meeting you. Ladies and gentlemen from high circles claimed that the rumors about her beauty were not at all exaggerated, that she really is dazzlingly beautiful, that it was an honor for them to meet her. Kyle asked the girl how she liked her first banquet. She claimed that she liked it. And suddenly everyone here is so good and kind. He asked her and her sister to wait here for a minute, making the excuse that he needs to discuss a couple of important matters regarding his business. The girl said, smiling so that he would not worry about her, that she and Claire would drink wine peacefully, and she showed off a glass of drink in her hand. The brunette urged the girl to try the wine. She said that their family is distributing it, so it must be good. Amelia agreed to taste the drink. Amelia took a sip from her glass, and I appreciated the taste of the intoxicating drink made from berries. Claire asked her if she had seen a fountain with a beautiful marble statue. She was surprised and answered negatively. The brunette praised the music. She paid attention to the excellent selection of the orchestra. She especially liked the sound of the violin. The girl supported her opinion, and she was surprised that she was so actively talking to her, as if she was trying to make her pay attention only to her. And nearby, Amelia heard fragments of phrases. They discussed behind her back that she was from the family of Count Dyne, a bankrupt count. They whispered about gossip, that her family was not even allowed into the palace, they were so poor. They were curious why the commander of the knights suddenly became poor. It was interesting how the girl wooed the Duke. It was assumed that the family sold it. Others said that Duke Child would never have loved such a woman, that he simply thought that she would not tear his brains out, since she herself came from a bankrupt family. They whispered that no matter what was there was definitely no smell of love here. The girl heard all this and became sad. She watched Claire as she tried to entertain her, and she realized that she was worried that the words flying from evil tongues could hurt her. Then luckily for her, Kyle came up. He apologized for having to stay a little longer than he had planned. Claire stood up and cheerfully waved her hand at the couple, saying that she would now go have fun. The girl thanked her for the company. The Duke was worried that he had kept Amelia waiting too long. She saw that his eyes were shining with love, and she didn't understand how it could be said that he didn't love her at all. The girl invited the man to dance, and I wanted to check how he learned the dance lessons that he took recently. And has he become a better waltzer since then? She jumped straight out of her chair, taking his hands. The Duke only chuckled in response. He guessed what she wanted, so that other girls can see how much he loves her, because they don't believe in their feelings. And he called out loud to her to go with him. The girl looked guilty. Couples circled in a waltz. Killian led the girl by the hand into the center of the dance hall. She thought he didn't have to lead. She knew he wasn't that good at dancing. But after a short time, Amelia was surprised that her partner danced the waltz very skillfully. It turned out that he had been very skillfully pretending all this time. He looked into her eyes and asked if this was all she could do. But the girl did not understand what he was talking about. He was sure that Claire had given her advice to step on the problem so that it would not arise again. Therefore, they could not stop now. After all, people will continue to talk nonsense even after their wedding. That even their children will have to listen to the fact that their parents' marriage was of convenience. Amelia thought that it was too early for them to think about children. Kyle continued that if she didn't want to talk like that, then she should ask him for something specific. The girl asked her to kiss her on the cheek. The Duke began to shower the girl's face with kisses. He asked if it was enough, and he added that no one seemed to believe them. Amelia realized that in this society, a kiss on the cheek meant nothing. She tensed, thinking about the task at hand. The girl held onto the Duke's shoulder. He looked into her eyes with all seriousness. She asked him to kiss him as passionately and liberated as he could. Music could be heard even in the palace garden. Couples of ladies and gentlemen were strolling into the fresh air after dancing. The girl asked Kyle to be more restrained. He held onto the wall with his gloved hand. He replied that she herself asked him. So this time there will be no count to 3. The man began to kiss the girl unexpectedly and passionately. She only managed to gasp. People around them began to pay attention to the couple, stopping and gasping. And the Duke pressed the girl to him and kissed her face with passionate and loud kisses. And more people gathered to look at the couple. Whispers turned into open murmurs and lonely exclamations gave way to open surprise. Kyle pulled away from the girl's lips. He asked if her idea was a success, if everything was as she had planned. Amelia had a pleased expression on her face. She didn't answer his question directly, perhaps because she was too embarrassed by his caresses for everyone to see. And the man argued that at least now everyone thinks about her differently than before. And the happy girl hugged him around the neck. The Duke asked if she cared about her reputation in the eyes of others. She answered in the affirmative, but now it no longer mattered. The silhouette of a young and happy man was clearly visible against the background of bright greenery. He said, "Amelia, I love you." But the girl did not let him finish, interrupting his speech with a passionate kiss. The secular society, which was the unwitting spectators of their tenderness, involuntarily gasped. It turned out that the girl prevented his confession with a kiss. The Duke had told Amelia that there were a lot of empty guest rooms here. What if she wants? Then she can borrow one of them in order to continue the manifestation of their love without witnesses in a more intimate setting. The girl assured that his acting skills were excellent, and that their viewers are already impressed enough. But he assured that now he was not playing tricks, but was offering in all seriousness. The golden-haired one asked him for a favor. The man became all ears and alerted his ears, which were already tingling with impatience. Amelia said that something in her throat was dry, and smiling, she asked to bring her a glass of water. The Duke's ears drooped and he whined in frustration. Kyle quickly turned around and walked away, promising that he would return soon. The girl waved her hand after him. Afterwards, she simply collapsed to the nearest place. She was catching her breath after her and the Duke's kiss. She couldn't help but feel as if someone was watching her. But the crowd all dispersed as soon as she sent Kyle away. A golden-haired girl with sad blue eyes came out of the bushes. She was somehow overly angular and broad-shouldered. She grinned evilly at Amelia. Our heroine had a chill. She clenched her lips and fists in rage. She was like a wound-up spring. She understood that in front of her was some strange guy dressed as a woman, and she began to run away from him. He followed her and asked her to wait. Amelia turned around, wanting to fight back. She asked what he needed and why he was dressed like a woman but spoke in a man's bass voice. The girl looked around and realized that she had been driven into a dead end. The pursuer was happy that he had finally caught up with the girl. She asked not to touch her. She said who she is, and she reminded her that she was Killian Child's fiancée. But he answered, taking a breath, that it was for this reason that he pursued her. He invited the girl to go with him without resistance, and he began to stretch out his tenacious hand to her. Amelia dodged the grab as best she could. She threatened that she was the daughter of the legendary former knight commander. The girl ground her teeth in indignation. She remembered that Claire advised her to destroy anyone who tried to offend her, and henceforth, no one will dare to treat her unworthily. She hit the aggressor between the legs with her knee as hard as she could. Amelia rejoiced in victory. She said that although she looks sweet and fragile, she has plenty of strength, and he needed to be put behind bars. The man was lying on the path and trembling all over, holding on to the bruised area. A wig of golden hair fell from his head. Amelia thought it was strange that the guy had gray hair. This was a hallmark of the imperial family, and at present there was only one young man in that family. She pushed such thoughts away. How could a crazy stalker turn out to be a prince? A guy with a face painted in a feminine manner asked the girl if she knew who he was. She smiled, realizing that the stranger she hit was the crown prince after all. The fun continued in the banquet hall. Duke Killian carried a glass of red wine in each hand. The girls looked at him, calling him handsome, in a whisper in his back. but he did not pay attention to them. The man walked along the path smiling to himself. He couldn't even believe that the girl herself asked to kiss her, and he liked to obey someone else's will. And he promised to let her be in charge more often. He dreamed that it would be especially good if she behaved like this tonight. He walked on the stone tiles of the Imperial Palace garden. The Duke was surprised not to find Amelia at the place where they parted. He wondered where she might have gone. He turned around and looked around, looking for clues to the whereabouts of his bride. Amelia called his name. He followed her voice, but not finding her, he called her by name, walking along the path. At the end of the path, he saw a frightened Amelia by the fountain, and a little further on lay something in a woman's dress. The girl, confused, blamed herself for destroying the future of the empire. She cried and clenched her hands into fists in frustration. Whistling and clanging sounds were heard from the energetic swings of the Duke's arms. He thanked the gods that the girl said his name, looking at him with eyes full of tears. The man hugged the girl, wanting to protect her from the whole world. Kyle pulled the girl away from him. He assured that since he was nearby, everything was fine. He convinced me that rebuilding an empire was not such an expensive undertaking. A detachment of knights came running. They turned to the lying prince, asking who attacked him, what kind of fearless criminal he was. A guy in a yellow dress and gray hair pointed his finger at Amelia. He said that the girl kicked him between the legs. He remembered that he had not yet had the opportunity to continue the imperial family. The three knights looked in surprise at the picture that appeared before their eyes. Duke Child hugged Amelia from behind. He said that since what happened concerned his fiancée, he took full responsibility. The man wondered if he should have wiped them off the face of the earth and built a new empire. But he thought that his Amelia might not like it. The girl found it strange that she could hear his thoughts. But then she remembered that the Duke had already put the ring with a right on her finger. But she could not allow a war to break out because of her. Therefore, she suggested that Kyle first call a doctor for His Majesty. The Duke assured His Majesty that he would be sent to the child hospital, and all expenses and compensation will be paid to him properly. Prince Bertie answered through clenched teeth that there was no need to voice this. And Duke Child asked him what forced him to follow someone else's bride, and why did he put on women's clothing? Then he defended himself, saying that the Duke himself knows how much he loves various pranks. But he promised that the girl would pay in any case for trying to kill him. This matter affected the honor of the imperial family. Heels clicked nearby. A brunette in a burgundy outfit asked the prince if he was okay. It was Lady Claire. She sat down next to the guy. She felt sorry for him and said that he needed help immediately. The prince claimed that he could not even move from his place, and he began to groan in pain. Claire said he didn't have to worry about anything, and she called him to come with her. At the same time, she ran her finger along the stones of her earrings with a sliding movement. Amelia was surprised when the couple suddenly disappeared from her sight. Such was the power of a right contained in her earrings. After all, Claire dreamed most of all about freedom. Therefore, the crystal given to her gave her the ability to teleport. The knights informed the confused Amelia that she should go with them to the investigation room. After all, according to the law, in the event of a crime against the imperial family, she will be in custody while the investigation is ongoing. The girl did not lose heart and said goodbye to Kyle. She told him that they would see each other later, when she was released from prison, and he reassured her, claiming that everything would be resolved quickly. He held her hand, and he knew that he would make every effort to ensure that everything was done in accordance with his conscience, and he promised that he would not hurt the girl. The girl even allowed him to hold her hands and looked into the man's eyes. Now she was glad that she could read his thoughts. She obeyed the letter of the law and allowed the knights to take her to prison. And evening was already descending on the imperial palace. The emperor spent his leisure time surrounded by his daughters. They were having fun and laughing in different voices. A servant appeared on their doorstep. He addressed His Highness, asking permission to enter. He asked what happened, reminding that the ball was already over. His gaze was stern. The emperor replied that he was busy now, but the servant reported that Duke Child was asking to receive him. His Highness was surprised. The emperor sat in the throne room dressed in white robes. Kyle, at a decent distance, began with words of greeting. He asked for forgiveness for disturbing me at such a late hour. He politely called him, according to tradition, the son of the empire, and he bowed to him meekly but not very low. The emperor's smile blossomed. He replied that he was flattered to hear flattering words from the son of the whole world. He heard words of praise many times a day. But this was a rare thing from Duke Child. His Highness told Kyle that he had heard about the incident between his lover and the prince, that he cannot worry and forget about what happened. He thought that in Child's hospital his son would definitely not become a eunuch. The Duke corrected His Highness that the girl was not his lover but his bride. But simply forget is not on the list of laws of the Empire. He was determined. The Emperor asked what Killian meant by this. What if he does not want to send her to the Western Tower, which is his request then? He replied that breaking the laws does not save the girl's honor. Therefore, he asked to change the law itself. He demanded that he immediately propose a bill in which he would renounce the privileges of inflicting punishment on those who committed crimes against the Empire. That this is the only way Amelia will be able to officially leave custody and stay at home while the investigation is underway. The Emperor sighed heavily. He argued that this was impossible, that imperial privileges cannot be revoked because of one incident. Moreover, it is not clear how the aristocracy will react, even if the imperial faction agrees. Killian assured with a smile that there was no need to worry about the aristocracy. He only asked the Emperor to propose a bill. His Highness calmed down and agreed. The imperial faction were people close to the Emperor by Childa's orders, and the faction of aristocrats are people chosen to represent the aristocracy by Child's order. It turned out that both of them were subordinate to Killian Child himself. In addition, he believed that imperial privileges were not the most important thing, although they also concerned him. However, there was a reason why Killian Child, who had the entire empire in his hands, did not take the throne himself. He asked His Majesty how he thinks whether his child will be as beautiful as his fiancée Amelia Dine. After all, the problem was precisely procreation. After all, Kyle didn't want to have children before. He said that imperial privileges mean nothing if there is no imperial family itself. His Highness agreed with the Duke's position and noted his reasonableness. He promised to propose legislation right now, and he instructed him to assemble a cabinet of representatives. Meanwhile, in His Highness's prisoner's cell, Amelia was persuaded to eat at least a piece. The maid said that it hurt her to watch how the incident depressed her. Another brought a milkshake specially prepared for her from the chef. But the girl did not lose heart. She was only here for 3 hours, and she was surprised at the conditions, that the cell looked like a room in an estate. The cell door swung open noisily. Kyle just flew into her. He asked Amelia from the doorway if she was okay. He asked her to forgive him for being a little late. He noted to himself that she looked exhausted. The girl claimed that she was fine, because only 3 hours had passed. He was glad to hear this. He called her to go home with him. She hesitantly replied that she could not go with him. The Duke was annoyed and surprised. He thought that maybe she didn't like that last kiss. Or he admitted that the prince could tell her nasty things about him. Hyde, who entered after the Duke, explained that while the investigation is underway, the girl should be at home. So he brought with him someone who would escort her to the house of Dine. Killian was outraged that he could not act as a member of her family. He believed that they needed to get engaged as soon as possible. After all, events developed extremely rapidly. The servant reported that Earl Dine had arrived. The father hugged his daughter, wondering if she was okay. She answered in the affirmative, explaining that Kyle took good care of her. The Count was surprised and outraged that the damned prince dared to offend his precious daughter by dressing in women's clothing. He smiled, glad that his daughter was able to rebuff him properly. He believed that he should not have let his daughter go to Duke Child. After all, he was no match for her. The girl thought that her father overestimated her too much. Count Dine frowned when he saw the ring on his daughter's finger. He asked what it was. Amelia meekly replied that the engagement ring was from Kyle. Father was angry. He screamed indignantly. Then he turned his indignant gaze to Duke Child himself. He considered him an extremely spoiled man. Killian smiled, although something told him that his future father-in-law now thought of him as worthless. The Count held his daughter's hand, which was wearing a ring with a right on top of a glove. He was outraged that the Duke dared to put an engagement ring on his daughter without even seeking his blessing.